I stood frozen outside my father's study when I heard him tell my brother Marcus, "Your sister, she doesn't deserve a dime. She's out." My mother Charlotte sat there smiling like she'd just won the lottery. After 20 years of being the family's unpaid caregiver, sacrificing my nursing career to care for Grandma Rose, this was my reward. I slipped away silently, my mind racing. That night, I moved every penny of my savings. But what they didn't know about my inheritance would change everything. The morning after overhearing that devastating conversation, I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon wafting through the house. My mother Charlotte was humming in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with unusual enthusiasm. She rarely cooked anymore, preferring to order from the country club or have me prepare meals. The formal china was out, the good silverware gleaming on perfectly pressed linen napkins. "Good morning, sweetheart," she chirped, not quite meeting my eyes as I entered. "I made your favorite blueberry pancakes." The sweetness in her voice made my skin crawl. I forced a smile and sat down, noticing the way she kept glancing at the clock. My father, Walter, emerged from his study newspaper tucked under his arm, wearing his best Saturday polo shirt instead of his usual weekend sweatpants. "Arabella." He nodded curtly, taking his seat at the head of the table. "We need to have a family meeting tonight, 7 sharp. "What about—" I asked, spreading butter on my pancakes with steady hands despite the churning in my stomach. "Just some financial matters we need to discuss," Charlotte interjected quickly. "Nothing to worry about, dear. Marcus will be joining us." Of course he would. My older brother Marcus, the golden child with his law degree and corner office, who visited maybe twice a year, but somehow remained the center of our parents' universe. I thought of all the nights I'd spent monitoring Grandma Rose's oxygen levels, changing her sheets, administering medications, while Marcus sent the occasional text asking how the old bird was doing. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. I caught Charlotte making hushed phone calls in the pantry, her voice too low to make out the words. Walter locked himself in his study, the sound of shuffling papers and file cabinets opening and closing throughout the afternoon. I busied myself cleaning Grandma Rose's room, though it had been spotless since her passing 3 months ago. Her lavender perfume still lingered on the pillows. Marcus arrived at 6:45 in his navy BMW, the one with the custom leather seats he loved to brag about. I watched from the window as he stepped out, checking his appearance in the side mirror before strutting to the front door. His Italian shoes clicked against the walkway with practiced authority. "There's my beautiful mother," he announced, sweeping Charlotte into a theatrical hug. She beamed, patting his cheek like he was still her baby boy at 38 years old. "Marcus, darling, you look wonderful. Have you lost weight?" "Been hitting the gym with the partners," he boasted, finally acknowledging my presence with a brief nod. "Arabella." "Marcus." We gathered in the living room, our parents taking their usual positions on the antique sofa, while Marcus claimed Walter's leather recliner without asking. I perched on the edge of the ottoman, already feeling like an outsider in my own home. Walter cleared his throat, producing a manila folder thick with documents. "As you both know, your mother and I aren't getting any younger. We've been working with our financial advisors to restructure the family trust." Smart thinking, Dad. Marcus immediately chimed in. "Estate planning is crucial at your age." Charlotte leaned forward, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "We believe it's important to recognize those who've contributed to building and maintaining the family legacy." My heart began to race. I thought of the $70,000 I'd saved over the years, every penny earned from the part-time nursing work I managed between caring for Grandma. Thank God I'd transferred it all to a new account at a different bank last night. "Now, Arabella." Walter continued his tone, taking on that patronizing edge I knew so well. "We want you to understand that you've already received substantial benefit from this family. Free room and board for over 2 decades is nothing to scoff at." Free room and board. The words escaped before I could stop them. I gave up my career to care for Grandma Rose. I was her full-time caregiver for 8 years. Charlotte's smile tightened. "And we appreciated that, dear. But you chose that path. Marcus has been building his career contributing to the family's reputation and financial growth. Marcus straightened in the recliner, smoothing his tie with manicured fingers. Actually, that brings me to some exciting news. I've just been promoted to senior partner at Whitman & Associates. Our parents erupted in congratulations, Charlotte actually clapping her hands together like a delighted child. I sat silent watching this performance with growing nausea. This is perfect timing. Walter beamed, reaching into his folder again. Marcus, your mother and I have been discussing this for months. We want you to take over management of all family financial matters. I'm honored, Dad. You won't regret this. We've already signed the power of attorney documents. Charlotte added, her eyes sliding over me as if I were a piece of furniture. Marcus will handle all the trust distributions, investments, and estate planning going forward. The room spun slightly. They'd already signed everything. This wasn't a family meeting. It was a notification of my disinheritance. What about Grandma Rose's estate? I managed to ask. She told me repeatedly that she wanted me to have her jewelry and personal effects. Marcus leaned back with a satisfied smirk. Well, as the designated financial manager, I'll need to assess all assets for their monetary value first. We can't have family heirlooms disappearing without proper documentation. Disappearing. Heat flooded my face. Are you suggesting I would steal from our grandmother? No one's suggesting anything, Walter said firmly. But emotions can run high after a loss, and people sometimes make rash decisions. This arrangement protects everyone. Protects everyone except me, apparently. Charlotte's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. That attitude is exactly why we need Marcus overseeing things. You're too emotional, Arabella. You always have been. I stood abruptly, the ottoman scraping against the hardwood floor. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. We're not finished here, Walter called after me. I replied, not looking back as I headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Marcus chuckle softly. Let her go. You know how she gets. The cool evening air hit my burning cheeks as I stepped onto the porch. Through the window, I could see them continuing their discussion, Marcus now holding court with animated gestures, while our parents hung on every word. The golden child had returned to claim his throne, and I had officially been written out of the family story. They thought they'd won, thought they'd put me in my place. They had no idea what was coming. After the disaster of a family meeting, I found myself drawn to Grandma Rose's room like a moth to flame. The door creaked softly as I pushed it open, afternoon sunlight filtering through her lace curtains and casting delicate patterns on the wallpaper. Everything remained exactly as she'd left it, from the romance novel bookmarked on her nightstand to the reading glasses folded neatly beside it. I sank onto her bed, running my fingers over the handmade quilt she'd stitched 40 years ago. Each square told a story she'd shared with me during those long nights when pain kept her awake. This blue fabric came from my grandfather's Navy uniform. That yellow piece was from Charlotte's baby dress back when my mother still had sweetness in her heart. My mind drifted to those final months when the cancer had spread beyond what any treatment could touch. I remembered the weight loss that made her wrists look like bird bones, the way she'd grip my hand during the worst of it, whispering that I was her angel. Where had my family been then? Marcus claimed work obligations. Charlotte developed mysterious migraines whenever I asked for help. Walter simply retreated further into his study, emerging only for meals. "You're the only one who sees me," Grandma Rose had said one October evening, her voice paper-thin but her eyes still sharp. "The others, they see dollar signs and property deeds, but you see me." I'd held her through the seizures, cleaned her when she could no longer make it to the bathroom, sang the old hymns that brought her comfort. The hospice nurse had praised my dedication, assuming I was a trained professional rather than a granddaughter who'd learned through necessity and love. Now, sitting in her empty room, I noticed her knitting basket tucked beside the rocking chair. Strange, I thought I'd gone through all her belongings already. The basket felt heavier than it should, and when I lifted the pile of half-finished scarves, my fingers found something solid underneath. A leather journal worn soft with age, hidden beneath balls of pink yarn. My heart hammered as I opened it, recognizing Grandma Rose's distinctive handwriting immediately. The first entry was dated 5 years ago, right around the time her health began declining. "They circle like vultures now," she'd written. "Walter asked about my accounts again today. Charlotte brought paperwork she wanted me to sign just in case. They think I'm too old to notice the greed in their eyes." I flipped through pages filled with observations that made my blood run cold. She documented every visit, every conversation, every pressure tactic. Here was Charlotte suggesting Grandma Rose was becoming confused and needed help managing her finances. There was Walter mentioning how complicated estate taxes could be if proper arrangements weren't made in advance. One entry from 3 years ago made me gasp. "Marcus visited today. First time in 6 months. Spent the entire hour explaining why I should liquidate my old investments and let him handle everything through his firm. When I refused, he actually raised his voice. Arabella heard from the kitchen and came running. The boy backed down quick enough when she appeared. My guardian angel always watching over me. I kept reading my anger building with each revelation. They'd tried to convince her to sign a new will. They'd brought lawyers to the house while I was at my part-time job. They'd even attempted to have her declared incompetent, but the doctor they'd hired took one look at Grandma Rose doing the Sunday crossword puzzle in pen and declared her sharp as a tack. Then near the middle of the journal, I found an entry that stopped me cold. Had to tell someone even if it's just this diary. The children don't know about Harold's stocks. He bought them in 1965, 200 shares of AT&T, when it was just starting to grow. I've been receiving dividends for 40 years, all going into a separate account at Prosperity Credit Union across town. Walter thinks he knows all my finances, but he only sees what I want him to see. My grandfather Harold had died before I was born, but Grandma Rose had kept his photograph on her dresser, talking to it sometimes when she thought she was alone. He'd been an electrician with the phone company she'd told me, a union man who believed in investing in what he knew. I calculated quickly. 200 shares of AT&T from 1965 with all the splits and dividends over the decades. My hands shook as I continued reading. Went to see Eleanor's grave today. Another entry read, "I promised her I'd protect what's mine from those who would steal it. She knew what they were capable of, tried to warn me before she died. Sweet Eleanor gone too soon. The police said it was an accident, but she was the most careful driver I knew. And then Walter handled all her affairs so quickly, so efficiently. I've kept my suspicions quiet all these years, but I haven't forgotten. Eleanor, Grandma Rose's younger sister who died in a car accident 25 years ago. I barely remembered her, just fragments of a woman who smelled like cinnamon and always had butterscotch candies in her purse. She'd been wealthy. I knew that much, inheriting from her husband who'd owned several factories. The journal entries became more urgent as they approached recent dates. The pain is getting worse. Arabella tries to hide her worry, but I see it. She's been researching treatments, calling specialists, fighting for me even when I'm ready to let go. The others have already divided my things in their minds. Charlotte was eyeing my pearl necklace last week, probably planning which country club event to wear it to. Made arrangements today at Prosperity. Sarah at the bank helped me set everything up properly. 20 years she's been keeping my secrets. Good woman, trustworthy. She has instructions for after I'm gone. The final entry was dated just 3 days before Grandma Rose passed. My time is close now. I can feel it in my bones, see it in the shadows that dance at the edge of my vision. I've done what I can to protect what Harold and Eleanor left behind. The vultures will circle, but they won't find what they're looking for. Only Arabella will understand. She's the only one who earned it, not through greed or manipulation, but through love. The safety deposit box holds the answer. Box 517. She'll know when it's time. I closed the journal, my mind reeling. All these years, Grandma Rose had been playing a deeper game than any of us realized. She'd watched my parents scheme and plan, all while sitting on significant assets they knew nothing about. The AT&T stock alone would be worth a fortune now, and if there were dividends accumulating for 40 years. But it was the mention of Eleanor that disturbed me most. Grandma Rose wasn't one for idle suspicions. If she believed something was wrong with Eleanor's death, there was reason for it. And Walter handling the affairs quickly. My father had been an accountant back then, not even established in his own practice yet. How had he managed to take control of a wealthy woman's estate? I tucked the journal inside my sweater and stood to leave, then froze. Footsteps in the hallway, the distinctive clicking of Charlotte's heels. I quickly straightened the knitting basket and grabbed a book from the shelf, settling into the rocking chair just as the door opened. "Oh," Charlotte said, seeming surprised to find me there. "I thought I heard someone moving around." "Just reading," I said, holding up the book. "It still smells like her perfume in here." Charlotte's eyes swept the room with calculating precision. "Yes, well, we'll need to start clearing things out soon. Marcus wants to renovate this space into a home office. Grandma's only been gone 3 months. Life moves on, Arabella. We can't shrine every room forever." She paused at the doorway. "Did you touch anything?" "Just the book." Her gaze lingered on the knitting basket for a moment before she nodded. "Well, don't stay up here too long. It's not healthy dwelling on the past." After she left, I waited a full 10 minutes before moving. Then I gathered the journal and slipped out of the room, my mind already racing ahead. Prosperity Credit Union. Sarah. Box 517. Grandma Rose had left me a trail to follow, and I was going to follow it to the end. As I passed Walter's study, I heard him on the phone. No, the old woman didn't have any significant assets beyond the house and her savings account. I've been managing her finances for years. I would know. How wrong he was. Grandma Rose had fooled them all, and now her secrets were mine to uncover. The vultures thought they'd won, but the game was far from over. Grandma Rose had made sure of that. 3 days after discovering Grandma Rose's journal, I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table when the doorbell rang. Charlotte was at her weekly bridge club, and Walter had left for his office early. I welcomed the solitude, using it to research Prosperity Credit Union and plan my next move. Through the peephole, I saw a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing a charcoal gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he had the patient demeanor of someone accustomed to waiting. "May I help you?" I asked, opening the door partway. "Miss Arabella Winters." He smiled kindly, producing a business card. "My name is James Morrison, attorney at law. I'm here regarding your grandmother Rose Winters' estate." My pulse quickened. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My brother Marcus handles all family financial matters now." "No misunderstanding," he assured me, glancing around the porch. "I specifically need to speak with you, privately, if possible." "My parents aren't home right now." "That would be ideal, actually. May I come in?" Something in his manner reminded me of Grandma Rose's description of trustworthy people. I stepped aside, leading him to the formal dining room, where we'd be able to see anyone approaching the house. James Morrison settled into a chair with practiced ease, placing his briefcase on the table. "First, let me offer my condolences on your grandmother's passing. She spoke of you often and with great affection." "You knew her?" "For 22 years, he confirmed. Though our professional relationship was kept strictly confidential as per her explicit instructions. "I don't understand. My father Walter handled all of Grandma's legal affairs." Morrison's expression grew carefully neutral. "Your father handled what your grandmother allowed him to see. She maintained separate legal representation for other matters." He opened his briefcase, withdrawing several folders and a manila envelope. "Your grandmother was a remarkably astute woman. She came to me in 2002, shortly after her sister Eleanor's death, seeking discreet estate planning services." Eleanor again. I leaned forward, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "What kind of estate planning?" "The kind designed to protect assets from those who might seek to appropriate them through undue influence or coercion." He opened the first folder. "Are you familiar with the concept of a revocable living trust?" "Somewhat. I took a few business courses before I left college to care for Grandma. Your grandmother established multiple trusts over the years, each with very specific distribution instructions. She also maintained several investment accounts and properties that were never disclosed to your father or his financial oversight. My mouth went dry. Properties. Morrison pulled out a photograph of a modern commercial building, all glass and steel, against the Seattle skyline. Are you familiar with the Cascade Technology Center on 4th Avenue? That's where Microsoft has regional offices. Among other tech companies, yes. Your grandmother purchased this building in 1995 using inheritance funds from her sister Eleanor. She established a limited liability company called ERW Holdings, Eleanor Rose, Winters Holdings, to manage the property. I stared at the photograph, trying to reconcile this information with the grandmother who darned socks and clipped grocery coupons. She owned this through the LLC, yes. The building has been fully leased for 20 years. Current rental income is approximately $40,000 per month. $40,000 per month. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Your grandmother was very specific about succession. Morrison continued sliding a document across to me. 3 days before her death, she executed a transfer of ownership document moving all shares of ERW Holdings into your name. Why 3 days before? Why not just put it in her will? Morrison's smile was knowing. Because wills can be contested. Wills go through probate. Wills become public record. Your grandmother understood that certain family members might create complications. He was being diplomatic, but I heard the warning clearly. You mean my parents and Marcus? I mean that your grandmother took extensive precautions to ensure her true wishes were honored. He pulled out another document. This is particularly important. Are you familiar with patent law? Not really. Your grandfather Harold was more than just an electrician. He held 3 patents for telecommunications equipment improvements filed in the late 60s and early 70s. These patents were ahead of their time, and as the technology caught up, they became quite valuable. The patents themselves have expired, but the royalties from licensing agreements during their active period were substantial. My parents never mentioned any patents, because they never knew. Your grandmother kept this income separate, managed through a different attorney before me. The accumulated royalties with interest and careful investment currently sit in a trust account worth approximately $8 million. The room tilted. I pressed my palms flat against the table, forcing myself to breathe evenly. $8 million. Your grandmother lived modestly by choice, not necessity. She watched your parents very carefully, especially after Eleanor's death. She knew what they valued and what they were capable of doing to get it. Speaking of Eleanor, I said carefully, Grandma Rose's journal mentioned suspicions about her death. Morrison's expression darkened. Your grandmother hired a private investigator in 2001. The official cause of death was brake failure leading to a collision. The investigator found irregularities in the brake line damage inconsistent with normal wear or failure. She thought Eleanor was murdered. She suspected it, but could never prove it. What she could prove was that your father moved with unusual speed to claim executor rights over Eleanor's estate, producing documents that Eleanor had supposedly signed just weeks before her death, documents that no one remembered her mentioning. He stole Eleanor's money. Legally, he administered it. Ethically, your grandmother had opinions, which is why she spent the next 20 years making sure the same thing wouldn't happen to her own estate. Morrison pulled out the manila envelope, sliding it across to me. Your grandmother wanted you to have this personally. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Grandma Rose's handwriting. My dearest Arabella, if you're reading this, then Mr. Morrison has found you and the truth is finally coming to light. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary. Your parents and brother showed me long ago that their love had a price tag attached. Only you loved me for me. The money and property are yours legally and morally. I earned them, Eleanor contributed to them, and Harold would have wanted his granddaughter to benefit from his hard work. But more than the material wealth, I leave you the truth. Use it wisely. The vultures will circle when they realize what they've lost. They'll rage and threaten and try every trick to steal what's yours. Don't let them. You're stronger than you know, smarter than they believe, and you have something they'll never understand: integrity. There's more to discover. Box 517 at Prosperity Credit Union holds additional surprises. Sarah Chen will help you. She's been waiting for you. All my love, Grandma Rose. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. Even from beyond the grave, she was protecting me, guiding me, showing me a path forward. What should I do now? I asked Morrison. First, we need to secure all documentation. I have copies in my office safe, but you should have your own set. Second, we need to formally register the ownership transfers with the appropriate agencies. Third, and this is crucial, tell no one about this until everything is finalized. My family will find out eventually. Yes, but by then it will be legally ironclad. Your grandmother spent 20 years building these protections. Don't let emotion or family pressure undo her careful work. A car door slammed outside. Morrison quickly gathered his papers, leaving me only the essential documents and his business card. Call me tomorrow. We'll set up a proper meeting at my office to review everything in detail. Someone's coming, I said, recognizing the sound of Walter's BMW. I'll show myself out the back, Morrison said smoothly. Remember, not a word to anyone. He disappeared through the kitchen just as Walter's key turned in the front lock. I slipped the documents into a magazine, my heart pounding as my father entered. Arabella, whose car is in the driveway. Someone looking for the Hendersons next door? I lied smoothly. They had the wrong address. Walter grunted, already heading for his study. Make sure the door's locked. We don't need solicitors bothering us. If only he knew who had really been here and what had just been set in motion. I clutched the magazine, hiding my inheritance documents, a small smile playing at my lips. Grandma Rose's chess game was entering its final moves, and I was no longer a pawn, but a queen, ready to claim the board. The next morning brought an unseasonably warm day for Seattle in March, the kind that tricks cherry blossoms into early blooming. I was preparing to leave for my meeting with Morrison when Marcus cornered me in the garage. He must have been waiting hidden behind Walter's tool cabinet because I didn't see him until his hand landed heavily on my shoulder. Going somewhere, little sister. I controlled my flinch, turning slowly to face him. He stood too close, using his height advantage to loom over me, a tactic he'd perfected in childhood. Just running errands, I said, keeping my voice neutral while clutching my purse closer. Inside were the documents Morrison had left carefully folded beneath my wallet. Funny thing, Marcus said, not moving aside. I saw an interesting car here yesterday, silver Lexus lawyer-type vehicle. Dad said someone was looking for the Hendersons, but Mrs. Henderson told me they haven't had any visitors all week. Maybe they missed them. Maybe. His smile reminded me of a shark circling prey. Or maybe my dear sister is keeping secrets. That would be very unlike you, Arabella. You've always been such an open book. I need to go, Marcus. I have a prescription to pick up for my migraines. Still getting those. He stepped aside but followed me to my car. You know, stress can trigger migraines, financial stress especially. Good thing you don't have to worry about managing any complicated money matters. That's what Big Brother is here for. I forced myself to remain calm as I got into my Honda, acutely aware of how shabby it looked beside his BMW. Marcus leaned down to my window level, his cologne overwhelming in the confined space. By the way, he said casually, I've been updating our home security system. Amazing what modern technology can do. Cameras everywhere now recording everything. For safety, of course. Of course. Even put some in the common areas inside. Living room, kitchen, hallways. You can never be too careful these days. He tapped my window frame. Drive safe, sis. I managed to wait until I turned the corner before my hands started shaking. Cameras. He'd been recording inside the house. My mind raced back over the past weeks. What had he seen? What had he heard? Instead of driving to Morrison's office, I took a circuitous route through downtown, checking my mirrors constantly. Was that silver sedan following me? What about the black SUV that seemed to take every turn I did? Paranoia, maybe. But Marcus's threat had been clear. I finally pulled into a parking garage and sat for 20 minutes watching. When no familiar cars appeared, I made my way to Morrison's building, taking the stairs instead of the elevator and entering through the side door. Morrison's assistant, an older woman with kind eyes, seemed to expect me. He said you might arrive looking concerned. You're safe here, dear. Our offices are checked weekly for surveillance devices. Is that really necessary? She gave me a knowing look. When family money is involved, absolutely. Morrison greeted me in his private office, gesturing to a chair across from his massive oak desk. You seem troubled. I told him about Marcus's confrontation and the cameras. Morrison's expression grew increasingly grim. Your brother is escalating quickly. This suggests he suspects something significant. He pulled out a legal pad. Tell me, has Marcus shown any unusual financial pressure lately? Expensive purchases? Lifestyle changes? He's always lived beyond his means, but nothing recent that I've noticed. Well, let's proceed with our business. Time is now of the essence. We spent 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, and discussing strategy. Morrison explained how Grandma Rose had structured everything to be legally bulletproof, using decades of careful planning to protect against challenges. However, he warned, your brother's surveillance admission is concerning. If he recorded my visit yesterday, he might try to claim undue influence or question your mental capacity. My mental capacity, a common tactic in inheritance disputes. Paint the beneficiary as unstable, possibly coerced. The fact that you sacrificed your career to care for Rose could be twisted to suggest dependency or manipulation. That's insane. That's family law. Morrison pulled out another file, which is why your grandmother took one more precaution. She had you undergo a psychological evaluation 6 months ago, remember? During her routine doctor visits. I thought back. Dr. Patricia Hernandez. Grandma said it was for a caregiver support program. Dr. Hernandez is one of the city's most respected geriatric psychiatrists. Her evaluation confirms you showed no signs of mental illness, cognitive impairment, or susceptibility to coercion. Your grandmother wanted that documentation on record. Once again, Grandma Rose had been 3 steps ahead. I signed the final papers with a mixture of gratitude and grief for the woman who'd protected me so thoroughly. Now, Morrison said, securing everything in his safe, you need to be very careful. Don't change your routine dramatically. Don't make large purchases. Act as if nothing has changed. For how long? Another week, maybe 2. We need time to file everything properly and ensure all transfers are complete. He handed me a burner phone. Use this if you need to contact me urgently. Your brother's admission about cameras suggests he might be monitoring your regular phone too. The drive home was tense, but I forced myself to stop at the pharmacy, maintaining my cover story. I even bought migraine medication. I didn't need chatting with the pharmacist about weather patterns and barometric pressure. When I arrived home, Marcus's BMW was still in the driveway. Through the window, I could see him in Walter's study, both of them hunched over a computer screen. Charlotte sat nearby, filing her nails with studied indifference. I entered through the back door, moving quietly toward the stairs. But Marcus must have been watching for me because he appeared in the hallway before I could escape. Get what you needed? He asked, eyeing my pharmacy bag. Yes, thank you for asking. Good. Say, Arabella, I've been going through some of Grandma's old papers. Funny thing, she mentioned something about a safety deposit box in one of her letters. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? My heart hammered, but I kept my expression confused. No, why would Dad handled all her banking? Right, of course. He studied me intently. It's just odd. The bank said she visited regularly right up until she got too sick. But there's no record of a box in her accounts we have access to. Maybe she was confused near the end. The pain medication made her foggy sometimes. Maybe. He stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath despite it being barely noon. Or maybe someone's been helping themselves to family assets. That would be a crime, you know. Elderly financial abuse is serious business. Are you accusing me of something, Marcus? Not at all. Just thinking out loud about how some people might take advantage of a dying woman's confusion. Forge signatures, hide assets, steal what rightfully belongs to the estate. His eyes were cold, calculating. Good thing I had those cameras installed. Video evidence is so useful in legal matters. I have nothing to hide, I said, proud of how steady my voice remained. Excellent. Then you won't mind if I check your room just to put everyone's minds at ease. Actually, I would mind. I'm 32 years old, Marcus, not a teenager you can bully. His facade cracked slightly, revealing the anger beneath. You always were too sensitive. But mark my words, if you're hiding something, I'll find it. I've got friends at the courthouse connections you can't imagine. One word from me and they'll freeze any account, investigate any transaction. Are you finished? I'd like to lie down. My migraine is getting worse. He stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Of course. Rest up, little sister. We have such interesting times ahead. I maintained my composure up the stairs and down the hall, but once in my room, I collapsed on the bed. The game was escalating faster than Morrison had predicted. Marcus wasn't just suspicious, he was actively hunting. Those cameras, his threats about courthouse connections, the way he'd specifically mentioned forged signatures and hidden assets. He knew something, but how much? I thought about the safety deposit box waiting at Prosperity Credit Union, Box 517. Grandma Rose had written, Sarah Chen would help me. But with Marcus watching my every move, how could I get there without leading him straight to whatever Grandma had hidden? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw your brother at courthouse this morning, asking questions about deceased estate protocols. Be careful. JM. Morrison was warning me. Marcus wasn't bluffing about his connections. I deleted the text immediately, then lay back staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in this house, cameras were recording. My brother was building a case against me for crimes I hadn't committed while hiding crimes of his own. But I had Grandma Rose's journal. I had Morrison's legal protection. And most importantly, I had the truth. Marcus thought he was the smart one, the successful one, the one who deserved everything. He was about to learn that the quiet sister he'd dismissed for years had been taught by a master strategist. The battle for Grandma Rose's legacy was truly beginning, and I was ready to fight. The house felt different now that I knew about the cameras. Every movement became a performance, every word carefully considered. I spent the next 2 days maintaining my routine, preparing meals, cleaning, tending to the garden Grandma Rose had loved. Let Marcus record the dutiful daughter going about her mundane life, while I planned my next moves. On the third night, I waited until the house settled into sleep. Walter's snores echoed from the master bedroom, and Charlotte had taken her nightly Ambien. Marcus had left earlier, claiming a late meeting with clients. I'd watched his taillights disappear before beginning my real work. Grandma Rose's room remained untouched since my last visit, moonlight streaming through the lace curtains. But tonight I wasn't here for sentiment. I was here for evidence. During our years together, Grandma had developed what she called her filing system, though it looked more like controlled chaos to anyone else. Important papers tucked inside book covers, receipts in jewelry boxes, documents hidden in places only someone who truly knew her would think to look. I started with her collection of Reader's Digest magazines dating back decades. She'd always insisted on keeping them, claiming they'd be valuable someday. Now I understood. Slipped between the pages of a 1998 issue, I found bank statements from an account I'd never seen before. The statements showed regular deposits throughout the 90s and early 2000s, dividend payments just as her journal had mentioned. But what caught my attention were the withdrawals, large sums transferred to estate of Eleanor Matthews, with Walter's signature as executor. I photographed everything with my phone, then checked the next hiding spot inside the lining of her sewing basket. Here were more documents originals of Grandma's will from 15 years ago. Her power of attorney forms her medical directives. I'd seen versions of these in Walter's files, but comparing them side by side revealed subtle differences. The signatures were close, but not identical. Someone had practiced Grandma Rose's handwriting extensively, yet under magnification. Through her reading glass, the forgeries revealed themselves. The pressure points were wrong, the loops in her R's not quite right, the slant of her writing too uniform. My hands trembled as I photographed these too. Walter hadn't just managed Grandma's finances, he'd been systematically forging documents to grant himself greater control. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. I froze, listening intently, but no other sounds followed. Just the old house settling, I told myself, though my heart continued racing. The final hiding place was inside Grandma's music box, a delicate thing that played Claire de Lune when opened. Beneath the velvet lining, I found what made my blood run cold, a notarized letter dated 5 years ago. To whom it may concern, I, Rose Eleanor Winters, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare that any attempts to contest my final will and testament, or to pressure my designated beneficiary, Arabella Marie Winters, will trigger the activation of my secondary estate plan. This plan, filed with Morrison and Associates, will redirect all contested assets to the following charitable organizations. A list of charities followed, then the key paragraph. This letter serves as notice that I have documented all attempts at financial coercion, undue influence, and potential elder abuse. These documents are secured in multiple locations. Any family member who challenges my express wishes will find themselves subject to legal investigation for their past actions regarding both my estate and that of my late sister, Eleanor Matthews. It was signed, notarized, and witnessed by 3 people, including Sarah Chen from Prosperity Credit Union. Grandma Rose hadn't just protected her assets, she'd set a trap for anyone who tried to steal them. I was so absorbed in reading that I almost missed the soft footsteps on the stairs, not the measured tread of my parents or the confident stride of Marcus. These were attempting stealth and failing. Quickly, I returned everything to its hiding place and grabbed a book curling into Grandma's chair just as Charlotte appeared in the doorway. She wore her silk robe, but her hair and makeup were still perfectly arranged. No one woke from Ambien looking that put together. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Just missing Grandma," I replied, holding up the book. "Reading helps." Charlotte glided into the room, her fingers trailing over surfaces, as if checking for dust. "You've been spending a lot of time up here. It's not healthy, dwelling on the past. Sometimes the past has lessons for the present." Her eyes sharpened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just something Grandma used to say. Your grandmother said a lot of things near the end. The pain medication, you know, made her paranoid. She kept talking about people stealing from her, hiding things from her. Poor thing didn't even recognize Marcus the last time he visited." That was a lie. Grandma's mind had remained crystal clear until her final day, but I simply nodded, playing along. Charlotte picked up the music box, winding the key. The melody tinkled through the room, ethereal and sad. "She promised me this when I got married, said it would be mine someday." "She left it to me," I said quietly. "She wrote it down. Written where I've seen the will Walter filed, there's no mention of personal items. Because Walter filed a forged version, I thought, but didn't say. Maybe in her personal notes. She kept lists of who should get what. Lists that conveniently only you saw." Charlotte set the music box down harder than necessary. "You know, Arabella, I've been very patient with you. We all have. But this possessiveness over Mother's things needs to stop. It's not normal. What's not normal is planning to renovate her room when she's barely been gone 3 months." Charlotte's facade cracked, revealing the steel beneath. "This is our house, your father's and mine. You're here as a guest, and guests who overstay their welcome find themselves looking for new accommodations. You're threatening to throw me out after I gave up 8 years to care for Grandma while you were at the country club. You chose that life," she snapped. No one forced you to play martyr. And frankly, we're starting to wonder if you had ulterior motives. Marcus found some very interesting discrepancies in Mother's accounts. Money moving in strange ways, signatures that don't quite match. The irony was almost too much. They were preparing to accuse me of exactly what they'd been doing for years. "I've never taken a penny that wasn't mine," I said truthfully. "We'll see about that." Marcus has a forensic accountant looking into everything. Every transaction, every document, every signature. If you've been stealing from this family, we'll prosecute to the fullest extent. She moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and that lockbox you have hidden in your closet. We know about it. One call to a judge claiming financial elder abuse, and we'll have a warrant to search everything you own." She swept out, leaving me shaken. A lockbox in my closet, I didn't have one, which meant they'd either planted something or were fishing for reactions. Either way, the threat was escalating beyond psychological warfare into dangerous territory. I waited another hour before leaving Grandma's room, the photographed documents safely uploaded to a cloud account Morrison had helped me set up. In my own room, I searched carefully and found it a small metal lockbox tucked behind my winter coats. Inside were printed emails that appeared to be from me to various banks discussing Grandma's accounts. The IP addresses, the language, even the signature were all wrong, but would a judge notice such details in a warrant application? They were framing me. Marcus with his forensic accountant Charlotte, with her veiled threats, Walter with his decades of forged documents. They'd stolen from Grandma and Eleanor, and now they were preparing to destroy me to cover their crimes. I sat on my bed, the fake lockbox in my lap, and smiled grimly. They thought they were so clever, but they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd revealed their hand too early, shown me exactly what they planned to accuse me of. And thanks to Grandma Rose's paranoid preparations, I had the originals to prove every forgery documentation of every theft and a notarized letter that would turn their weapon against them. Tomorrow, I would need to visit Prosperity Credit Union despite the risks. Whatever waited in Box 517, Grandma had considered it important enough to mention in her final message. The vultures were circling, but they had no idea they were about to fly into a carefully constructed net. Grandma Rose had spent 20 years preparing for this battle, and I was ready to finish what she'd started. My mother had always been a creature of habit. Bridge club on Wednesdays, tennis on Fridays, spa appointments every other Tuesday. So when she announced at breakfast that she had a medical appointment on a Monday morning, my suspicions were immediately raised. "Nothing serious, I hope?" Walter asked, barely glancing up from his Wall Street Journal. "Just routine women's things," Charlotte replied with the delicate shudder she employed whenever she wanted to end a conversation. It worked perfectly on Walter, who returned to his paper with visible relief. But I noticed the designer dress she'd chosen the extra care with her makeup, the Hermes handbag usually reserved for special occasions. This was no doctor's visit. After she left in her white Mercedes, I waited exactly 10 minutes before following in my Honda. The benefit of driving an unremarkable car is that it's perfect for surveillance. Charlotte would never notice one more silver sedan in Seattle traffic. She didn't head toward any medical complex. Instead, she drove downtown to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel using valet parking instead of the garage. I parked on the street and followed on foot, watching her sail through the lobby with practiced elegance. The Fairmont's Georgian Room was hosting its usual power lunch crowd. I slipped into the bar area, choosing a seat partially hidden by a potted palm, but with clear sightlines to the dining room. Charlotte had taken a corner table, ordering mineral water while she waited. Her companion arrived 15 minutes later, and I nearly gasped. Patricia Whitman, wife of Marcus's boss at Whitman & Associates, the woman who controlled whether Marcus kept his supposed partnership or found himself blackballed from every major firm in the city. I ordered a club soda, positioning my phone to look like I was reading while actually recording. The two women air-kissed Charlotte, complimenting Patricia's St. John's suit, while Patricia admired Charlotte's new highlights. But beneath the pleasantries, tension crackled. "Thank you for meeting me," Charlotte said once they'd ordered. "I know how busy you are." "Your message suggested urgency," Patricia replied. Something about Marcus and a misunderstanding. Charlotte's laugh was brittle. More than a misunderstanding, I'm afraid. There's been a terrible mix-up at the firm. Some missing funds that Marcus is being blamed for completely unfairly. Patricia's expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened. Charlotte, I need to be clear. I'm here as a courtesy to our friendship, not as a representative of the firm. Of course. But you have influence with Robert. If you could just explain that Marcus is being scapegoated. Scapegoated. Patricia set down her water glass carefully. Charlotte, your son embezzled over $300,000 from client trust accounts. We have documentation, forensic accounting reports, even surveillance footage of him accessing the funds. The blood drained from Charlotte's face. That's impossible. Marcus would never... He's been doing it for 18 months. Small amounts at first, then larger sums when he thought no one was watching. Robert wanted to press charges immediately, but I convinced him to handle it quietly, for now. Charlotte's hands trembled as she reached for her purse. There must be something we can do, some arrangement. I could write a check today, pay back everything with interest. It's not about the money anymore. It's about trust, reputation, legal liability. Marcus violated his fiduciary duty to our clients. Please, Charlotte's voice dropped to a whisper. This would destroy our family. Walter's business relies on referrals from firms like yours. And Arabella, well, she's unstable enough without adding this scandal. I gripped my glass tighter at the casual lie about my mental health. Patricia leaned back, studying Charlotte with calculating eyes. What exactly are you asking me to do? Convince Robert to keep this quiet. Let Marcus resign for personal reasons. We'll make full restitution and... Charlotte pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. This is a small token of my appreciation for your discretion. Patricia didn't touch the envelope. Are you attempting to bribe me, Charlotte? No, of course not. Just one mother to another. You understand how we protect our children. I understand that your son is a thief who's been stealing from clients, including elderly retirees who trusted us with their life savings. Patricia stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Wait, Charlotte grabbed her arm. What if I had information about someone else, a bigger crime? Would that change things? Patricia paused. What kind of information? My daughter Arabella. We have evidence she's been stealing from my mother's estate. Elder financial abuse, forged documents, hidden assets. Marcus was investigating when this misunderstanding at the firm occurred. Perhaps he got too close to something. You're suggesting your daughter framed your son. She's always been jealous of Marcus, and she had complete access to Mother for years. We've found suspicious documents, unusual transactions. If the authorities were tipped off, they'd find a much bigger crime than a few borrowed funds that Marcus fully intended to repay. Patricia sat back down slowly. You'd throw your own daughter under the bus to save your son? Arabella made her choice when she started stealing from a helpless old woman. We have camera footage documents, even a confession she doesn't know we recorded. My heart raced. A confession. What had they manufactured now? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Charlotte, you've just made this very interesting. Tell me more about this evidence against your daughter. For the next 20 minutes, Charlotte spun a web of lies about my supposed crimes. According to her, I'd isolated Grandma Rose, controlled her medications to keep her compliant forged checks, and hidden assets worth millions. The details were specific enough to be damning, creative enough to be believed. We were trying to handle it within the family, Charlotte concluded. But if it would help Marcus's situation to involve the authorities, I'll need to see this evidence, Patricia said. Everything you have. Documents, recordings, financial records. I can have it all to you by tomorrow. Good. And Charlotte, this conversation never happened. If anyone asks, we discussed charity work for the hospital foundation. They paid their check and prepared to leave. I was about to slip out first when Patricia turned back. One more thing, she said quietly. You mentioned camera footage. I assume you've been recording interactions with Arabella. Marcus installed a comprehensive system. We have weeks of footage showing her suspicious behavior. Excellent. Make sure those files are backed up securely. Video evidence is incredibly powerful in court. Patricia's smile was sharp. I'll be in touch. I waited until they were gone before leaving my mind racing. The FBI agent theory from Morrison's warning suddenly made more sense. Patricia's questions, her sudden interest after initially rejecting the bribe, the way she'd prompted Charlotte to provide more details. She wasn't helping Charlotte, she was gathering evidence. Outside, I sat in my car for a moment, processing what I'd learned. Marcus had embezzled $300,000. Charlotte was willing to frame me to save him. They had manufactured evidence and were prepared to destroy me completely. But they'd also revealed their entire strategy to someone who might be law enforcement. Patricia Whitman, whoever she really was now, knew about the cameras, the forged evidence, and Charlotte's attempted bribery. I drove home carefully checking my mirrors more from habit than real concern. The game had just shifted dramatically. My family wasn't just trying to cut me out of an inheritance, they were preparing to send me to prison for crimes they'd committed. But they'd made a crucial error. In their desperation to save Marcus, they'd exposed themselves to someone who appeared to be playing a much longer game. Patricia's final comments about video evidence weren't helpful suggestions, they were prompts to get Charlotte to admit to surveillance on tape. Back home, I found Walter in his study on a conference call. Marcus's BMW was gone, but fresh cigarette butts in the garden suggested he'd been here recently. He'd quit smoking 5 years ago or so, he'd claimed. Stress was reviving old habits. I went to my room and began my own preparations. If they wanted to play with fabricated evidence, I needed to document everything. Every interaction, every threat, every lie needed to be recorded and saved. My phone buzzed, a message from the burner phone Morrison had given me. Federal investigators contacted me about your family. Say nothing without lawyer present. Major development coming. Stay safe. Federal investigators. So Patricia was FBI or working with them. Charlotte had just tried to bribe a federal agent and frame me for elder abuse in the same conversation. The irony was delicious, but the danger was real. That night, I heard urgent whispers from my parents' room. Charlotte's voice was high-panicked. Walter's responses were sharp-angry. Marcus arrived near midnight, and the three of them huddled in the study until nearly dawn. They were realizing their mistake. Patricia must have revealed something, or maybe they'd done their own research and discovered she wasn't who she appeared to be. Either way, the predators were suddenly feeling like prey. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling thinking of Grandma Rose. She'd known this day would come, had prepared for it meticulously. "The vultures will circle," she'd written. But vultures are scavengers, not hunters. When faced with a real threat, they scatter. Tomorrow, I would finally visit Box 517. Whatever additional evidence Grandma had hidden there, I needed it now more than ever. The war for her legacy was escalating into a federal investigation, and I intended to be the last one standing when the dust settled. The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, typical Seattle spring weather that matched my mood. The house felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Charlotte hadn't come down for breakfast, Walter had locked himself in his study before sunrise, and Marcus's BMW remained in the driveway, though he'd reportedly stayed up until 4 a.m. I made my usual breakfast, maintaining the routine for the cameras, then announced loudly that I was going grocery shopping. No one responded, but I felt eyes watching from behind curtains as I drove away. Prosperity Credit Union sat in an older part of town squeezed between a Vietnamese restaurant and a vintage clothing shop. It was small, family-owned, the kind of place larger banks had been trying to buy out or crush for years. Exactly the kind of institution Grandma Rose would trust with her secrets. The interior was clean but dated with wood paneling and green carpet that had seen better decades. An elderly security guard nodded as I entered, and I counted only 3 other customers. Perfect. "May I help you?" The teller was young, early 20s, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. I need to speak with Sarah Chen about accessing a safety deposit box. Her expression shifted slightly. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back office, and a moment later, a woman in her 50s emerged. Sarah Chen had silver threading through her black hair and an air of quiet authority. Her eyes studied me carefully before she smiled. You must be Arabella. I've been expecting you. You have. Your grandmother told me you'd come eventually. She described you perfectly. Sarah gestured toward a private office. Please, let's talk somewhere more comfortable. Her office was small but meticulously organized with a photo of what looked like grandchildren on her desk. She closed the door and engaged what looked like a white noise machine. Privacy, she explained. Your grandmother valued it highly. You knew her well. 23 years, Sarah confirmed. She opened her first account here in 2001, right after her sister's death. Said she needed a bank her family didn't know about. I found her journal. She mentioned you several times. Sarah's expression softened. Rose was more than a customer. She became a friend. We'd have tea sometimes when she came in, talk about our families. She was so proud of you, you know. The way you cared for her, sacrificed for her. It broke her heart that your parents couldn't see your worth. She hid it well. She hid many things well. Sarah pulled out a key. Box 517. She paid for it through 2030, insisted on it. Said you might need time to discover it existed. We walked to the vault together, passing through 2 sets of security doors. The safety deposit box area was small, private, with individual viewing rooms. Sarah used her master key along with the one from an envelope marked with my name and pulled out a large box. I'll give you privacy, she said. Take as much time as you need. If you need anything copied or notarized, I'm authorized to help. Alone in the viewing room, I opened the box with trembling hands. The contents were organized into labeled folders, Grandma Rose's neat handwriting marking each one. The first folder made my heart stop. Eleanor's death evidence. Inside were photographs of Eleanor's car after the accident, but not official police photos. These were taken by someone else, someone who'd examined the scene independently. Close-ups showed the brake line with clear tool marks notes in the margins, pointing out inconsistencies with accidental damage. A private investigator's report from 2001 confirmed what Morrison had hinted at. The investigator had found evidence of tampering, but also discovered that key pieces of physical evidence had disappeared from police custody shortly after Walter inserted himself as executor. The next document was a photocopy of Eleanor's real will, dated just days before the one Walter had produced. In this version, Eleanor left everything to Grandma Rose, not to Walter, as temporary executor. The signatures were dramatically different, and a handwriting expert's analysis was attached, confirming the will Walter filed was forged. The second folder was labeled AT&T Stock Certificates. Original certificates dating from 1965, Harold's careful signature on each one. A note from Grandma explained she'd kept these as originals while converting others to electronic form, wanting physical proof of the initial investment. An account statement from last month showed the current value of the electronic holdings, $12.3 million. The third folder nearly made me cry, for my Arabella personal. Inside were photographs spanning decades. Me as a baby in Grandma's arms. My first day of kindergarten, high school graduation where Grandma beamed while my parents looked at their watches. Recent photos, 2 candid shots of me caring for her, reading to her brushing her hair. She must have had Sarah or someone else take them secretly. A letter dated a month before her death was addressed to me. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then the wolves have shown their teeth and you found your way to Sarah. I'm so proud of you for being strong enough to seek the truth. The documents in this box prove what I've long suspected but couldn't act on while alive. Your parents are thieves, and possibly worse. They stole from Eleanor and they've been stealing from me for years, but I let them think they were succeeding while I built my real fortune elsewhere. The AT&T stock is yours, as is the building in Seattle. But there's more. Check with Morrison about the overseas accounts investments I made in the 80s that your parents never discovered. You'll find I've been quite successful in my dotty old lady years. Don't let them break you, my angel. They'll try everything. Lies, threats, maybe even violence. But you have truth on your side, and that's more powerful than all their schemes. One last thing, the DVD in this box contains my insurance policy. I had hidden cameras of my own dear one. Every threat they made, every forged document they presented, every moment of elder abuse is recorded. Sarah has copies in her safe, as does Morrison. Use it when the time is right. And remember, I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Forever your devoted Grandma Rose. My hands shook as I picked up the DVD. Grandma had been recording them too. While they built their false case against me, she'd been documenting their actual crimes. The fourth folder was labeled simply Financial Crimes Evidence Chain. It contained copies of bank statements showing suspicious transfers, forged signatures on documents, and a timeline Charlotte had written in her own hand, planning how to gain control of Rose's assets. One note chillingly read, "Once M has power of attorney, we can move everything offshore. A will appear if needed." But the final folder was the most damaging federal investigation initial contact. Grandma Rose had reached out to the FBI 2 years ago. She'd reported suspicions about Eleanor's death, the financial fraud, and elder abuse. The agent assigned had been Patricia Whitman. The pieces clicked into place. Patricia wasn't just investigating Marcus's embezzlement. She'd been building a case about Eleanor's murder and the systematic theft from Grandma Rose. Her meeting with Charlotte wasn't a chance encounter. It was part of a 2-year federal investigation that Grandma had initiated. I carefully photographed everything, then called Sarah back. "I need copies of all of this," I said, "and I need it notarized." "Of course. Your grandmother prepared me for this day." She paused. "There's something else. A package arrived last week addressed to you, care of the credit union. Rose arranged it before she passed. The package contained a laptop and external hard drives, along with a note, the digital copies of everything plus the full surveillance footage. Morrison has the passwords. I spent 3 hours at the credit union copying, notarizing, and organizing evidence. Sarah helped with quiet efficiency, occasionally sharing memories of Grandma Rose that made us both tear up. "She knew this day would come," Sarah said as we finished. "She told me once that she was playing a long game, that justice for Eleanor might take decades, but it would come." Why didn't she act sooner? She was gathering evidence, building an airtight case, and frankly, I think she was protecting you. While she lived, they needed her alive for her signatures. Once she was gone, Sarah shrugged meaningfully. I left the credit union with multiple copies of everything the originals returned to the box for safekeeping. But as I drove, I noticed a familiar car in my rearview mirror, Marcus's BMW trying to hang back but failing at subtlety. He must have followed me despite my precautions, or maybe they'd put a tracker on my car. Either way, he now knew about Prosperity Credit Union. Instead of panicking, I felt oddly calm. Let him know. Let him report back to Walter and Charlotte. They just discovered I'd found Grandma's real banking institution, but they had no idea what waited in Box 517. They had no idea that their victim had been documenting their crimes for years, that the FBI had been watching for 2 years, that Patricia Whitman's investigation was about to explode their entire world. I drove home carefully, Marcus tailing me the entire way. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw window curtains twitch. The whole family was watching, waiting, ready to pounce. But I had Grandma Rose's evidence now. I had the proof of their crimes, the documentation of a federal investigation, and video footage of their abuse. The predators thought they'd cornered their prey, not realizing they'd walked into a trap 20 years in the making. The real game was about to begin. 2 days after my visit to Prosperity Credit Union, the tension in the house had reached unbearable levels. Marcus had moved back home, temporarily taking over the guest room and prowling the halls at all hours. Walter emerged from his study only for hushed conferences with Charlotte, their voices sharp with panic whenever they thought I couldn't hear. They knew I'd discovered something at the credit union, but not what. I maintained my routine cooking and cleaning as if nothing had changed, but underneath the calm exterior, I was coordinating with Morrison, preparing for whatever assault my family was planning. The evidence from Box 517 was now safely distributed copies with Morrison with Sarah Chen and uploaded to secure cloud servers. On Wednesday afternoon, I was in the garden pruning Grandma Rose's beloved rose bushes when I heard footsteps on the gravel path. I turned expecting another confrontation with Marcus, but instead found Janet Sullivan Walter's secretary of 15 years. "Hello, Arabella," she said quietly, glancing nervously toward the house. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Janet had always been pleasant but distant, the epitome of professional discretion. Her presence here, especially seeking privacy, sent alarm bells ringing. The old greenhouse, I suggested leading her to the structure at the garden's far edge. Grandma Rose had used it for her orchids, but it had been neglected since her death. More importantly, it was too far from the house for any cameras or listening devices. Inside, surrounded by empty planting tables and the musty smell of unused earth, Janet's composed facade crumbled. "I shouldn't be here." She began wringing her hands. "If Walter knew, but I can't stay silent anymore, not after what I've learned." "What have you learned?" She took a deep breath. "I've been documenting your father's illegal activities for 5 years. Tax evasion, fraudulent billing money, laundering through shell companies. I have copies of everything." I stared at her stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm not just his secretary." Janet reached into her purse, pulling out an old photograph. "I'm Rose's goddaughter. My mother and Rose were best friends from childhood. Rose asked me to watch over you, to protect you when the time came." The photograph showed a younger Grandma Rose with another woman, both laughing at some long-ago summer picnic. Between them sat a little girl with Janet's distinctive red hair. "Grandma never mentioned you," I said carefully. "We agreed it was safer that way. If your parents knew about our connection, I'd have been fired immediately. So I stayed quiet, did my job, and documented every crime that crossed Walter's desk." Her expression hardened. "Your father has been stealing for 30 years, not just from Rose and Eleanor, but from clients' partners, anyone who trusted him." "Do you have proof?" Janet pulled out a flash drive. 5 years of emails, financial records, recorded conversations. Walter had me install recording software on his computer for quality assurance. He never realized I kept copies of everything. "Why now? Why come forward now?" "Because they're planning something terrible." Janet's voice dropped. "Yesterday, Walter had me research psychiatric commitment procedures. He wants to have you declared mentally incompetent and take control of any inheritance. They've been editing the security footage, creating a narrative of unstable behavior." My blood ran cold. Morrison had warned me they might try this, but having it confirmed was different. "There's more," Janet continued. "Marcus isn't just embezzling from his firm. He's been stealing from Walter's clients, too, using his power of attorney access. Your parents don't know yet. When they find out, they'll try to pin it all on me," I finished. "Exactly. You're already their scapegoat for everything else." Janet handed me the flash drive. "This contains enough evidence to destroy them all, but there's something else you need to know. I've been cooperating with federal investigators for 2 years. Patricia Whitman." Janet's eyes widened. "You know about the investigation?" "I recently learned Grandma initiated it. She suspected they murdered Eleanor." Rose was right. I found correspondence in Walter's old files referencing the Eleanor problem and permanent solutions, nothing explicitly admitting murder, but combined with the tampered brake lines. Janet shuddered. "I've been feeding information to the FBI building the financial crimes case while they investigated the potential homicide." So Patricia's meeting with Charlotte, a sting. Charlotte tried to bribe a federal agent, which adds another charge to an already substantial list. Janet smiled grimly. "Your mother has no idea how much trouble they're in." A text buzzed on my phone from the burner Morrison had given me. Urgent, Marcus at courthouse filing competency petition. Come immediately. I showed Janet the message. Her face paled. They're moving faster than I thought. You need to leave now. Do you have somewhere safe to go? Morrison will help. Good. I'll buy you time. She squeezed my hand. Rose would be so proud of you. She always said you were the only one worth saving in this family. We parted ways, Janet returning to the house while I slipped around to my car. As I drove away, I saw her entering Walter's study, no doubt, with some urgent business matter that would keep him occupied. At Morrison's office, I found a war council already in session. Morrison, an FBI agent I didn't recognize, and surprisingly, Patricia Whitman herself. Ms. Winters, Patricia greeted me. I apologize for the deception at lunch with your mother. Agent Patricia Whitman, FBI Financial Crimes Division. You've been investigating my family for 2 years. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. She came to us with substantial evidence of financial fraud and suspicions about her sister's death. We've been building a comprehensive case, but your family's recent actions have accelerated our timeline. Morrison interrupted. Marcus has filed an emergency petition claiming you're mentally unstable and have been stealing from the estate. He's requesting immediate conservatorship. Can he do that? He can try, but I've already filed a counter motion with evidence of his embezzlement and the family's fraudulent activities. The judge has agreed to seal the proceedings pending federal investigation. Agent Whitman leaned forward. We were planning to wait another month before moving, but your mother's bribery attempt and this conservatorship filing have forced our hand. We're executing search warrants tomorrow morning. For what? Everything. Your parents' home, Walter's office, Marcus's apartment, all financial records. We have enough evidence to charge them with elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The murder investigation for Eleanor Matthews remains open, but progressing. Morrison added, I've also filed the secondary will your grandmother mentioned, the one that activates if anyone contests her primary wishes. It's quite clever, actually. Any family member who challenges your inheritance forfeits their entire share to charity. So by filing the conservatorship petition, Marcus just disinherited himself completely, Morrison confirmed with satisfaction, as will your parents if they support his petition. I shared Janet's flash drive with them, explaining her revelations. Agent Whitman's eyes lit up. Janet Sullivan has been invaluable. Her documentation will seal the financial crimes case. She paused. Ms. Winters, I need to warn you. Tomorrow will be chaotic. Your family will likely lash out when they realize what's happening. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? She'll stay with me, Morrison offered. My wife and I have plenty of room and I have excellent security. As we prepared to leave, Agent Whitman pulled me aside. Your grandmother would be proud. She spent years planning this, gathering evidence protecting you. She knew this day would come. I just wish she could see it. Who says she can't? Whitman smiled. Rose told me once that she'd haunt Walter if he hurt you. Tomorrow, when we arrest him in his own study surrounded by evidence of his crimes, I think she'll be watching. That night, safe in Morrison's guest room, I finally allowed myself to process everything. My family had conspired against me, but I wasn't alone. Grandma Rose had built a network of protectors. Morrison, Sarah Chen, Janet Sullivan, even federal agents. She'd known I would need allies and had spent years putting them in place. Tomorrow, the empire my parents had built on lies and theft would come crashing down. The little sister they'd dismissed, the daughter they'd tried to disinherit, would be the only one left standing when the dust settled. Not through luck or chance, but through the careful planning of a grandmother who loved me enough to wage a 20-year war for justice. The vultures had circled just as Grandma Rose predicted. They simply never realized the dying woman they'd tried to rob had been setting snares the entire time, and tomorrow every trap would spring at once. The next morning arrived with deceptive calm. I'd spent the night at Morrison's home, his wife Mary treating me like a daughter, making sure I ate breakfast despite my churning stomach. The FBI raids were scheduled for 10 a.m., but my family had one more card to play. At 8:30, my phone rang. Charlotte's voice was honeyed with false concern. "Arabella, darling, we've been so worried. Dr. Harold Benson is here. He's a specialist in family therapy and trauma. We thought it might help to talk through everything together." Morrison, listening on speaker, shook his head vigorously. But I had an idea. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said calmly. After hanging up, Morrison protested. "This is clearly a trap. Dr. Benson is probably someone they're paying to declare you incompetent." "I know," I replied, pulling out my phone to show him the recording app Agent Whitman had installed. "Which is exactly why I need to go. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. At least wait until I can arrange protection. They won't try anything physical with a witness present. And if this Dr. Benson is corrupt, getting him on record will add another charge to their collection." Morrison reluctantly agreed, but insisted on following in his own car. He also called Agent Whitman to alert her to the situation. I arrived home to find an unfamiliar Lincoln Town car in the driveway. Professional expensive meant to convey authority. Inside, my family had arranged themselves in the living room like a tribunal. Walter in his leather chair, Charlotte on the sofa, Marcus standing by the fireplace like a sentinel. Dr. Harold Benson occupied the second leather chair, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the soft look of someone who preferred easy money to ethical practice. His diploma mill certificates would probably crumble under scrutiny. "Arabella," he greeted with practiced warmth, "your family has expressed some concerns about your mental well-being following your grandmother's passing. Have they—" I settled into the remaining chair, noting the camera Marcus had positioned to capture my reactions. "What specific concerns?" "Well, they mention you've been isolating yourself, showing signs of paranoia, making unfounded accusations against family members." He consulted notes that looked freshly written in Charlotte's handwriting. "There are concerns about hoarding behaviors with your grandmother's belongings and possible delusional thinking regarding hidden assets." "I see, and you've reached these conclusions after knowing me for approximately 30 seconds. His smile wavered slightly. "I'm here to evaluate, not conclude. This is just a friendly conversation." "Is that why Marcus is recording for a friendly conversation?" Charlotte interjected. "We're just trying to help you, sweetheart. You've been under so much stress caring for Mother all those years. Sometimes that can affect our judgment." "My judgment seems fine," I said evenly. "I haven't embezzled money from anyone's firm, for instance." Marcus's face darkened. "See, these baseless accusations are exactly what we're talking about." Dr. Benson leaned forward. "Arabella, do you often have thoughts that family members are conspiring against you?" "I don't have thoughts about it. I have evidence of it." I pulled out my phone. "Would you like to hear the recording of my mother attempting to bribe a federal agent 2 days ago?" Dead silence. Charlotte went pale. Walter's knuckles whitened as he gripped his chair arms. Dr. Benson rallied. "Recordings can be misinterpreted out of context. What's important is how these beliefs are affecting your daily functioning. Are you sleeping well? Eating properly?" "Better than my brother, I imagine. Tell me, Marcus, how many nights have you been up trying to cover the $300,000 you stole from client accounts?" "You crazy?" Marcus started forward, but Walter barked his name, stopping him. Dr. Benson made notes furiously. These persistent delusions about family members committing crimes suggest a possible paranoid personality disorder. Combined with the isolation and hoarding behaviors— "What's your license number?" I interrupted. "I'm sorry." "Your psychiatric license number. I'd like to verify your credentials before we continue." He flushed. "I don't see how that's relevant." "It's completely relevant. You see, recording someone without their consent in Washington state is a two-party consent issue. Unless this is an official psychiatric evaluation, which would require proper licensing and documentation, my brother is committing a crime right now." I turned to the camera. "Marcus, are you recording this conversation without my written consent?" "This is ridiculous," Charlotte snapped. "We're trying to help you." No, you're trying to have me declared incompetent so you can steal my inheritance. But here's what you don't know. I found Grandma Rose's real will, the one that activates if anyone contests her wishes. I smiled at their stricken faces. Congratulations, Marcus. By filing that conservatorship petition yesterday, you just forfeited your entire inheritance to the Seattle Children's Hospital. Dr. Benson stood abruptly. I think we should postpone this evaluation. Sit down, Walter commanded. We're paying you to do a job. Actually, I said, let me help clarify the situation for you, Dr. Benson. The FBI will be here in approximately 90 minutes with search warrants. They'll be very interested in any psychiatric professional who participated in a conspiracy to commit fraud through false mental health evaluations. The doctor went white. FBI, I was told this was a simple family intervention. Did they also tell you they murdered my great-aunt Eleanor for her money, or that they've been stealing from my grandmother's estate for 20 years? How about the forged documents hidden in Walter's study? Stop talking, Walter roared, but I continued calmly. I'm curious, Dr. Benson, how much did they pay you? Was it worth losing your license and facing federal charges? The doctor grabbed his briefcase with shaking hands. I need to leave, now. You're not going anywhere. Marcus blocked the doorway. We paid you $10,000. $10,000? I laughed. That's all you sold your professional ethics for what Marcus steals in a weekend. Dr. Benson looked between us, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Winters, I was not aware of any federal investigation. This consultation is terminated. If you leave, we'll sue you for breach of contract, Charlotte threatened. Sue me then. Benson pushed past Marcus. I'd rather face a civil suit than federal conspiracy charges. As his car peeled out of the driveway, my family turned on me with naked fury. You've ruined everything, Walter snarled. Everything we've built, everything we've worked for, everything you stole, I corrected, from Grandma Rose, from Eleanor, from your clients. It's over. We're your family. Charlotte's perfectly composed mask finally cracked completely. How could you betray us like this? The same way you betrayed me when you decided I didn't deserve a dime, when you called me unstable, when you plotted to lock me away. I stood heading for the door. The FBI will explain the rest when they arrive. Marcus lunged for me, but I sidestepped him easily. Years of lifting and maneuvering Grandma Rose had made me stronger than he expected. Oh, and Marcus. I paused at the threshold. That camera you've been using to record me, the FBI will find some interesting footage on there, like you discussing how to forge Grandma's signature or Mom practicing her bribery speech. I left them screaming accusations at each other, their perfect family facade shattered beyond repair. Outside, Morrison waited in his car along with 2 FBI agents who'd arrived early to ensure my safety. How did it go? Morrison asked. Dr. Benson just became a prosecution witness, I said, finally allowing myself to smile, and I got them admitting to the payment on camera. Agent Whitman's voice crackled over the agent's radio. All units in position. Execute search warrants in 15 minutes. I climbed into Morrison's car, watching my childhood home one last time. In 15 minutes, federal agents would swarm through every room, every file, every hidden space. They'd find Walter's forged documents, Charlotte's bribery money, Marcus's embezzlement records. They'd discover cameras full of self-incriminating footage and computers full of evidence Grandma Rose had been documenting for decades. The trap Grandma had spent 20 years building was about to snap shut, and I had a front row seat to watch it all unfold. The vultures had gathered for what they thought would be an easy meal, never realizing they were the ones being hunted all along. 3 days after the FBI raids, my extended family received urgent summons to gather at the Winters estate. The calls came from Charlotte, her voice trembling with barely controlled hysteria as she pleaded for family unity in these trying times. What she didn't mention was that Walter was out on bail, Marcus was under house arrest with an ankle monitor, and federal prosecutors had frozen every account they could find. I arrived at the sprawling house to find cars lining the circular driveway like a funeral procession. Inside, relatives I hadn't seen in years milled about the formal dining room, their conversations dying as I entered. Aunt Catherine, my mother's older sister from Portland, studied me with sharp eyes. Uncle Raymond, Grandma Rose's last surviving sibling at 84, sat ramrod straight in his wheelchair. Cousins, second cousins, and various spouses filled every available seat. Charlotte had pulled out all the stops, the good china-catered appetizers, even fresh flower arrangements. It was a desperate attempt to project normalcy while their world crumbled. Thank you all for coming. Walter began standing at the head of the table. He'd aged a decade. In 3 days, his usual commanding presence diminished to something hollow and desperate. As you may have heard, our family is facing some challenges. Challenges? Cousin Bradley snorted. The news says you're being investigated for murder, Walter. Alleged financial irregularities, Charlotte corrected quickly. All a terrible misunderstanding that we're working to resolve. With the help of family, Walter added meaningfully, which brings us to why we've gathered you here today. Marcus, who'd been sulking in the corner, stepped forward. His ankle monitor bulged, obviously beneath his tailored pants. Mother Rose's estate has become complicated due to certain interference. His eyes found mine. We need the family's support to ensure her assets are distributed fairly. Fairly? I couldn't help but laugh. Is that what we're calling theft now? You see, Charlotte gestured at me. This is exactly the problem. Arabella has been poisoning the waters, making wild accusations, turning government agencies against her own family. Aunt Catherine leaned forward. What specific accusations, Charlotte? Walter cleared his throat. She claims we mismanage Mother's finances, which is patently absurd. I've handled her affairs for 20 years without a single complaint. Because you hid what you were doing, I said clearly. But Grandma knew. She documented everything. More delusions, Marcus interjected. Our sister has been struggling with mental health issues since Grandmother's death. We tried to get her help, but she refused. Is that why you paid Dr. Harold Benson $10,000 to declare me incompetent? I pulled out my phone. Should I play the recording where you admit to it? The room stirred uneasily. Uncle Raymond's voice cut through the murmurs. Play it. Charlotte tried to object, but Uncle Raymond's glare silenced her. I played the relevant portion, Dr. Benson's nervous admission about the payment echoing through the room. That's taken out of context, Walter blustered. Then let me provide more context. I stood addressing the room. 25 years ago, Eleanor Matthews died in a car accident. Within days, Walter produced a will naming him executor, inheriting everything she owned. The original will left it all to Grandma Rose. You can't prove that, Charlotte snapped. Actually, I can. I pulled out copies of the documents from Box 517. Eleanor's real will, proof the signature on Walter's version was forged, evidence that her brake lines were deliberately cut. The room erupted. Aunt Catherine snatched the documents, studying them with growing horror. Other relatives crowded around, voices rising in shock and anger. Enough! Walter slammed his hand on the table. These are fabrications. Arabella has always been jealous of Marcus, and now she's trying to destroy our family. The FBI doesn't think they're fabrications, I said calmly. Neither did Grandma Rose when she started documenting your crimes 20 years ago. What crimes? Uncle Raymond demanded. I took a deep breath. Embezzlement, fraud, elder abuse, forged documents, stolen inheritance, and possibly murder. This is slander, Marcus shouted. No, this is evidence. I began distributing copies of Grandma's journal entries, bank statements, and photographs. Grandma knew you were stealing from her. She knew you killed Eleanor, so she spent 20 years building a case that would destroy you all. Aunt Catherine looked up from the papers, her face pale. My God, Charlotte. Mother tried to tell me years ago that something was wrong with Eleanor's death. I didn't listen. Because it's not true. Charlotte's composure finally shattered completely. Mother was senile, she made up stories. Senile. Uncle Raymond's voice was dangerously quiet. My sister was sharp as a tack until her last breath. I spoke with her the week before she died. She told me she was leaving everything to Arabella because the rest of you were vultures. She didn't mean it, Walter insisted. She was medicated, confused. Stop lying. The words exploded from me. For once in your lives, stop lying. You isolated her from the family, telling everyone she was too fragile for visitors. You controlled her medications to keep her manageable. You forged her signature on documents. And when she was dying, when she needed you most, you were plotting to steal everything she had. Tears ran down my face as I continued. I held her hand through every treatment, every seizure, every nightmare. Where were you? Planning renovations for her room, deciding which of her belongings to sell, fighting over money she hadn't even left you? We needed to plan for the future, Charlotte said weakly. Your future. Never hers, never mine. I pulled out the DVD from Grandma Rose. She knew exactly who you were, and she made sure everyone else would know too. I moved to the television, inserting the disc. The room fell silent as Grandma Rose appeared on screen, frail but fierce, sitting in her bedroom with Sarah Chen beside her as witness. If you're watching this, Grandma's recorded voice began, then my family has shown their true colors. I need you all to know the truth. For the next 20 minutes, Grandma detailed every crime, every betrayal, every piece of evidence she'd gathered. She spoke of Eleanor's murder, of Walter's decades of theft, of Charlotte's callous greed, and Marcus's entitled cruelty. But she also spoke of me, of love and sacrifice, of the daughter of her heart, who'd earned everything through compassion rather than calculation. When it finished, the room was tomb silent. Charlotte wept, whether from grief or self-pity, I couldn't tell. Walter stood frozen, his face gray. Marcus had collapsed into a chair, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Aunt Catherine stood slowly. I motioned that the family formally recognizes Arabella as the sole legitimate heir to Rose Winter's estate. Seconded, Uncle Raymond said firmly. You can't do this, Walter roared. I'll fight it in court. With what money? Cousin Bradley asked. From what I hear, the feds froze everything you have. Besides, Aunt Catherine added, holding up a document I'd shared, Rose's secondary will states that anyone who contests Arabella's inheritance forfeits their share to charity. You've already triggered that clause, haven't you, Marcus? Marcus's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. One by one, family members stood to leave, many stopping to embrace me or offer apologies for years of absence. Uncle Raymond wheeled over, taking my hand in his weathered ones. Rose would be so proud, he said softly. You did what none of us had the courage to do. You stood up to them. As the house emptied, leaving just my immediate family and me, the facade finally crumbled entirely. Charlotte's perfect makeup ran in streams down her face. Walter gripped the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Marcus stared at his ankle monitor as if just realizing it would be part of his life for years to come. Get out, Walter said hoarsely. Get out of my house. Gladly. I gathered my papers, Grandma's DVD, the evidence of their crimes. But remember, this was never your house. It was Grandma's, and according to her will, it's mine now. I left them in their empty dining room, surrounded by the debris of their failed coup. The family meeting they'd orchestrated to turn relatives against me had instead become their final judgment. Grandma Rose had predicted it all, planned for it all, and once again protected me from beyond the grave. As I drove away, I thought I felt her presence beside me, finally at peace, knowing justice would be served. The vultures had gathered for one last feast, only to discover they were the ones being devoured. The pounding on my apartment door at 2 a.m. could have woken the dead. I'd moved into a furnished rental near Morrison's office the day after the family meeting, needing space from the toxic atmosphere of my childhood home. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus swaying on his feet, disheveled and reeking of whiskey even through the door. "Open up, Arabella." He slammed his fist against the wood again. "I know you're in there." I checked my phone already recording, then called building security to alert them before cracking the door open with the chain still engaged. "Marcus, you're drunk and violating your house arrest radius." His bloodshot eyes focused on me with difficulty. "You destroyed everything. Everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? Go home before you make things worse for yourself." "Worse?" He laughed a harsh, broken sound. "How could it get worse? My career's over. Patricia Whitman made sure every firm in the city knows what I did. 300,000 Arabella. 300,000 I have to pay back, and they froze everything." "You stole it, Marcus. What did you expect?" "I borrowed it." He slammed against the door, making the chain rattle. "I was going to pay it back. The cards, the games, I had a system." "Gambling," I said flatly. "You embezzled client funds for gambling. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Everyone expecting success, demanding perfection. Do you know what it's like being the family's golden child?" "No, I was too busy being the family's servant." His face contorted with rage. "You always were a martyr. Poor little Arabella taking care of Grandma. You planned this all along, didn't you? Manipulated her into leaving you everything." "I loved her. That's the difference between us." "Love." He spat the word like poison. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't buy respect. I needed that money." "So you stole it." "I took what I deserved, what should have been mine." He fumbled in his jacket and my heart stopped as he pulled out a gun. "But you had to ruin it, had to play detective, had to bring in the feds." I kept my voice steady despite my racing pulse. "Marcus, put the gun down. You're drunk and not thinking clearly." "Oh, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." He waved the weapon erratically. "Without you, none of this happens. Mom and Dad keep running things. I fix the temporary cash problem. Life goes on. But no perfect Arabella had to have her revenge." "This isn't revenge, it's justice." "Justice." He laughed again, pressing closer to the gap in the door. "There's no justice in this world. There's only winners and losers, and you've made me a loser." "You made yourself a loser when you chose to steal." "Shut up." The gun swung wildly. "I need money, Arabella, real money. Not the pittance they left me, but enough to run, enough to start over somewhere they can't find me." "The FBI has your passport. You're wearing an ankle monitor. There's nowhere to run." "There's always somewhere if you have enough money." His eyes glittered with desperate cunning. "Grandma left you millions. That building, the stocks, all of it. You're going to share." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'll tell them everything. How you poisoned her, slowly controlled her medications, isolated her from family. I've got it all figured out. Who do you think they'll believe, the successful lawyer or the bitter spinster?" "The bitter spinster with documented evidence of your crimes." I held up my phone showing the recording app, "including this conversation where you're threatening me with a gun." His face went purple. "Give me that phone." "Building security is already on their way up. So are the police. Your ankle monitor triggered the moment you left your approved radius." As if on cue, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Marcus spun toward the sound and I slammed the door shut, engaging the deadbolt. He howled and pounded on it, but within seconds, I heard security officers shouting commands. Through the peephole, I watched them disarm and restrain him. The gun turned out to be Walter's antique revolver, unloaded, but still a violation of his bail conditions. Marcus sobbed as they held him, all his bravado evaporating. "It's not fair," he kept repeating. "I'm the successful one. I'm the one who matters." The police arrived within minutes, federal marshals right behind them. I gave my statement, provided the recording, and watched them load Marcus into a patrol car. His house arrest had just become actual arrest, with new charges of criminal threats, weapons violations, and attempted extortion added to his growing list. Morrison arrived as they were finishing up, having rushed over despite the late hour. "Are you all right?" "Shaken, but safe," I admitted. I knew he was desperate, but I didn't expect him to completely implode like this. Criminals often do when cornered. The golden child discovering he's actually fool's gold tends to break them. He studied me with concern. "This recording will be devastating for his defense. He admitted to the embezzlement, the gambling, even threatened to file false accusations against you. Will it help the federal case?" "Immensely. He's looking at 15 to 20 years now, possibly more." Morrison's expression grew grim. "Your parents will blame you for this." "They already do." The next morning, news of Marcus's arrest spread quickly. My phone buzzed with calls from relatives, reporters, and numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all, focusing instead on meeting with Agent Whitman to review the new evidence. "Your brother handed us everything we needed," she said, reviewing the recording. "His admission about the gambling establishes motive for the embezzlement. The threat with the weapon shows consciousness of guilt, and his offer to fabricate evidence against you demonstrates a pattern of criminal behavior." "What about my parents?" "Walter's trial starts next month. With Janet Sullivan's evidence and your grandmother's documentation, he's looking at 25 to life for the financial crimes alone. If we can prove Eleanor's murder, that becomes life without parole." "And Charlotte?" "The bribery attempt is 5 to 10 years. Her involvement in the elder abuse adds another 10. She'll likely die in prison." The weight of it settled on my shoulders. My entire immediate family would spend their remaining years behind bars. The golden child, the society mother, the successful businessman, all reduced to federal identification numbers. "You did the right thing," Agent Whitman said gently. "They chose this path decades ago when they decided murder and theft were acceptable means to wealth. Your grandmother knew this day would come. She prepared for it, prepared you for it." That evening, I sat in my quiet apartment processing the night's events. Marcus had been the last to fall, but his downfall was perhaps the most spectacular. The favored son, groomed for greatness, had destroyed himself with greed and entitlement. My phone rang, showing Morrison's number. "I wanted you to know." He said, "Marcus took a plea deal this afternoon. He's agreed to testify against your parents in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. 15 years instead of 20. He's turning on them. Self-preservation is all he has left. Walter and Charlotte created a monster, and now that monster will help destroy them." After we hung up, I poured a glass of wine and raised it to Grandma Rose's photo on my mantel. The boy she'd once bounced on her knee, who'd charmed her with childish drawings and sticky kisses, had become a man willing to threaten violence for money. But she'd seen it coming, prepared for it, and ensured his greed would be his downfall. The golden child tarnished himself. I whispered to her image. "Just like you predicted." Marcus's spectacular fall from grace was complete. The successful lawyer was now a convicted felon, the family's pride reduced to their greatest shame. And somewhere I imagined Grandma Rose nodding with grim satisfaction, knowing that justice had finally been served to those who thought themselves above it. The federal courthouse in downtown Seattle buzzed with activity on the morning the investigation went fully public. News vans lined the street, reporters jostling for position as prosecutors unveiled what they called one of the most extensive family fraud cases in Washington state history. I sat in a witness waiting room with Morrison watching the coverage on a mounted television. The lead prosecutor, a stern woman named Catherine Chen, laid out the charges in methodical detail. Walter Winter's 37 counts of fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Charlotte Winter's 23 counts, including bribery of a federal agent, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Marcus Winter's 18 counts of embezzlement, extortion, and criminal threats. The screen split to show footage of FBI agents carrying boxes from Walter's office, from our family home, from Marcus's luxury apartment. 20 years of hidden crimes spilling into daylight. Additionally, Prosecutor Chen continued, We are reopening the investigation into the death of Eleanor Matthews from 25 years ago. New evidence suggests her death may have been homicide staged to look like an accident. Morrison squeezed my shoulder as I trembled. Even expecting it, hearing Eleanor's potential murder, stated so publicly, felt surreal. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Whitman. "Your testimony in 10 minutes. Remember, just tell the truth." The courtroom was packed when I entered. I caught glimpses of extended family members, former colleagues of Walter's society, friends of Charlotte's who'd come to gawk at the scandal. My parents sat at the defense table looking haggard, their expensive attorneys unable to hide the defeat in their eyes. As I took the witness stand, Charlotte's gaze met mine. For a moment, I saw not the cold society matron, but the mother who'd once kissed my scraped knees and read me bedtime stories. Then her lips curled in contempt, and the moment passed. Prosecutor Chen approached with a reassuring smile. "Ms. Winters, can you tell the court about your grandmother, Rose Winters' final years?" For the next 3 hours, I laid out everything. The sacrifices I'd made to care for Grandma, the isolation my family enforced, the pressure they applied for her to sign documents, the conversations I'd overheard about my disinheritance, the discovery of her journal and the evidence she'd hidden. "Did your grandmother ever express fears about your family?" Chen asked. "Yes. She told me she was playing a long game, that she had to be careful. She said they were vultures circling, waiting for her to die." "Objection!" Walter's lawyer shouted. "Hearsay!" "I'll allow it," the judge ruled. "Continue, Ms. Winters." I described finding the forged documents, the hidden bank accounts, the evidence of Eleanor's tampered brake lines. The courtroom grew so quiet you could hear pencils scratching as reporters took notes. "The defendant, Marcus Winters, visited you recently, correct?" Chen moved to the newest evidence. "Yes, he came to my apartment at 2 a.m. intoxicated and armed." "What did he want?" "Money to flee the country. When I refused, he threatened to fabricate evidence that I'd poisoned our grandmother." "Did he make any admissions during this encounter?" I pulled out my phone, the recording already queued up. "May I play the relevant portion?" Marcus's slurred voice filled the courtroom. 300,000 Arabella. 300,000 I have to pay back. The cards, the games, I had a system. Later, "Without you, none of this happens. Mom and Dad keep running things. I fix the temporary cash problem. Life goes on." The jury leaned forward as Marcus's recorded voice threatened to lie about my poisoning Grandma. Several gasped at the venom in his tone. "No further questions," Chen said. The defense attorneys tried to discredit me, painting me as a bitter daughter, angry about her inheritance. But every accusation fell flat against the mountain of evidence. When Charlotte's lawyer suggested I'd manipulated my dying grandmother, I simply responded, "I loved her. I cared for her. That's not manipulation, that's family, or it should be." The real bombshell came that afternoon when Richard Dalton took the stand. Charlotte's affair partner now states evidence looked like a man facing his own mortality. "Mr. Dalton," Prosecutor Chen began, "you were romantically involved with Charlotte Winters." "For 5 years, yes." "Did she ever discuss her family's financial situation?" Richard's hands shook as he answered. "She said once Walter was arrested, she'd divorce him, and we'd live off what she called the Eleanor money. She said they'd been careful for 25 years, and no one would ever prove anything about the accident. She specifically used the word accident. She said, 'We made it look like an accident, and that's all anyone can prove.'" The courtroom erupted. Charlotte shot to her feet, screaming, "You lying bastard, you swore you loved me." The judge pounded his gavel, ordering her removed. As bailiffs escorted her out, she turned to me one last time. "You did this. You destroyed us. I wish you died instead of her." "So do I whispered, though only Morrison heard me. The following days brought an avalanche of evidence. Janet Sullivan testified about decades of financial crimes, providing detailed documentation. Sarah Chen from the credit union explained how Grandma Rose had methodically protected her assets while gathering evidence. Patricia Whitman laid out the 2-year federal investigation, revealing wiretaps, surveillance footage, and financial tracking that painted a damning picture. Dr. Harold Benson, given immunity for his testimony, admitted to being paid to declare me mentally incompetent. They said she was stealing from the family that I'd be helping protect their assets. I didn't know about the federal investigation, I swear. But the most dramatic moment came when Eleanor Matthews' case was presented. A forensic specialist testified that new analysis of the brake line photographs showed clear tool marks consistent with deliberate sabotage. The timing of Walter's takeover of her estate, the forged will, the missing police evidence, it all pointed to premeditated murder. We believe Prosecutor Chen stated that Walter and Charlotte Winters murdered Eleanor Matthews for her $4 million estate, then used that money to build their own fortune while systematically stealing from Rose Winters over the next 2 decades. On the final day of testimony, they played Grandma Rose's DVD in its entirety. Her voice, strong despite her frailty, filled the courtroom as she detailed every crime, every betrayal, every piece of evidence she'd gathered. "I stayed silent to protect Arabella," her recorded voice said. "As long as I lived, they needed me for appearances, but I knew once I was gone, they'd turn on her. So I prepared, I gathered, I documented, and I made sure that when this day came, the truth would destroy them." They killed my sister Eleanor. I could never prove it, but I knew. The way Walter appeared with papers so quickly, the way Charlotte suddenly had money for jewelry and cars. Blood money, all of it. But my Arabella, she's clean. She's good. She loved me when there was nothing to gain from it. So I'm leaving her everything, and I'm leaving them the justice they deserve. When the video ended, several jury members were crying. Even the judge seemed affected, calling a brief recess to compose himself. Walter's defense made one last desperate play, calling a surprise witness their own daughter. But I wasn't the witness they expected. Instead, they called a cousin who barely knew us, trying to testify about my unstable behavior at family gatherings years ago. It was pathetic and quickly dismissed. In her closing argument, Prosecutor Chen painted a picture of 3 decades of greed, betrayal, and murder. This family built their wealth on blood and theft. They killed Eleanor Matthews. They robbed Rose Winters. They tried to destroy Arabella Winters when she threatened their empire of lies. Today, you have the power to end their reign of greed and give them the justice they've avoided for 25 years. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. As they filed back in, I held Morrison's hand, my heart pounding. On the charge of murder in the first degree of Eleanor Matthews, we find the defendant, Walter Winters, guilty. We find the defendant, Charlotte Winters, guilty. The guilty verdicts rolled on fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, money laundering conspiracy, every charge, every count. Marcus had already pled guilty, but hearing his crimes confirmed in open court still felt necessary. As the bailiffs prepared to lead them away, Walter turned to me. The commanding father I'd feared my whole life looked small, broken old. "I hope you're satisfied," he said. "I'm not," I replied honestly, "but Grandma Rose is, and Eleanor, that's all that matters." Charlotte said nothing, her perfect composure finally completely shattered. The society queen would trade her designer suits for prison orange, her country club lunches for cafeteria trays. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Morrison and Agent Whitman helped me navigate to a waiting car. As we drove away, I saw the news vans, the headlines already forming, "Seattle Society Family Convicted of Murder. 25-year-old cold case solved. Daughter's testimony destroys dynasty of greed." But I didn't care about the sensationalism. All I could think about was Grandma Rose, who'd spent her final years gathering evidence and protecting me. Eleanor, whose death had finally been acknowledged as murder. And myself, the dismissed daughter, who'd brought down an empire built on blood and lies. The federal investigation had indeed exploded, taking my entire family with it. But from those ashes, truth had finally emerged. Justice delayed by decades had arrived with devastating finality. The call came at 6 a.m. on a rain-soaked Thursday, 3 weeks after the trial. Detective Michelle Vargas from Seattle PD's Cold Case Unit spoke with careful precision. "Ms. Winters, we've made significant progress in your great-aunt Eleanor's case. There's new evidence we need to discuss. Can you come to the station today?" Morrison accompanied me to the police station where Detective Vargas waited in a conference room with boxes of files and evidence bags. Her partner, Detective Ray Huang, nodded grimly as we entered. "Thank you for coming." Vargas began gesturing to the materials spread across the table. "Based on the federal investigation and your grandmother's evidence, we've conducted a complete review of Eleanor Matthews' death from December 1998. She pulled out a photograph of Eleanor's car crumpled against a concrete barrier on Highway 99. The original investigation concluded brake failure led to the crash, but your grandmother's private investigator was right. The brake line damage wasn't consistent with normal wear." Detective Huang added, "We've also recovered the missing evidence from police storage. It was misfiled, not destroyed, though we suspect that was intentional. Someone hid it. A records clerk named Dennis Palmer who retired in 2000. He died 5 years ago, but we found deposits in his account from that period, matching withdrawals from an account your father controlled." My stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. Walter had paid someone to hide evidence of Eleanor's murder. Vargas continued, "But here's what changes everything. Last week, we received a package addressed to the Cold Case Unit. No return address postmarked from Tacoma." She pulled out a clear evidence bag containing a manila envelope. Inside was a video cassette, the kind people used in the 90s for home recordings. "The tape was labeled Insurance," Huang explained. "We had it digitally converted. What we found, Ms. Winters, this will be difficult to watch." They set up a laptop and Vargas pressed play. The grainy footage showed what looked like a garage, the camera positioned high in a corner. The timestamp read December 10th, 1998, 5 days before Eleanor's death. Walter appeared in frame, younger but unmistakable, examining a car, Eleanor's car. Charlotte joined him, and their voices carried clearly to the camera's microphone. "You're sure this will work?" Charlotte asked. "I've researched it thoroughly," Walter replied, sliding under the car with tools. "The brake line will hold for normal driving but fail under heavy pressure. She always takes Highway 99 to visit Rose on Sundays, that downhill stretch before the curve. What if she survives? She won't. Not at that speed, not without brakes." Walter emerged from under the car, wiping his hands. "The beautiful thing is, it'll look like normal wear. Metal fatigue. Happens all the time on older vehicles." Charlotte paced nervously. "And her will." "Already handled. I've got the paperwork ready. We file it Monday after the accident. No one questions the grieving nephew handling his aunt's affairs." $4 million, Charlotte breathed. "It'll change everything." "It's what we deserve," Walter said coldly. "Eleanor never had children. That money would just go to charity otherwise. We're family. We've earned it." The video continued for another 10 minutes, showing them discussing alibis, practicing their grief-stricken performances, even joking about what they'd buy with the money. My parents planning murder, like a dinner party. When it ended, I sat in stunned silence. I'd known intellectually they'd killed Eleanor, but seeing it, hearing them plan it so casually. "Who sent this?" Morrison asked. "We're still investigating," Vargas admitted. "But handwriting analysis of the envelope matches samples we have from Rose Winters." My head snapped up. "Grandma Rose had this." "We believe so. The question is why she held onto it instead of going to police 25 years ago." I thought about it then, understood. She was protecting me. If she'd turned them in, then I'd have gone into foster care. She waited until I was old enough to protect myself. "There's more," Huang said quietly. "We found Eleanor's original day planner in the recovered evidence. The day before her death, she'd written, 'Meet with lawyer about our situation.' We think 'our' meant Rose." "Eleanor knew something," Vargas explained. We've theorized she discovered Walter had been stealing from Rose's accounts and was going to expose him. That's why they moved up their timeline. Morrison leaned forward. Do you have enough to prosecute for murder? With this video, absolutely. Premeditated murder conspiracy fraud. Your parents are looking at life without parole. They showed me more evidence, financial records, proving Walter had started planning the estate takeover months before Eleanor's death. Charlotte's journal from that period with coded references to the project, even receipts for the tools Walter used to sabotage the brake line. Your grandmother was meticulous, Vargas said with clear admiration. She gathered evidence for 25 years, waiting for the right moment. She even found the person who recorded that video. Who was it? Dennis Palmer's son, Kyle. He was 16, working in Walter's garage for extra money. He'd set up the camera to record himself practicing guitar, but caught your parents instead. He told his father, who was a police records clerk. And Dennis hid the evidence for money, I finished. Kyle kept the original tape out of fear. When he heard about the federal investigation, his conscience finally won. He mailed it anonymously, but we tracked him down. He's agreed to testify. The detectives spent another hour walking me through their case. With each piece of evidence, Eleanor became more real to me. Not just a name in family stories or a victim in reports, but a woman who'd loved her sister, who'd tried to protect her, who died for discovering the truth. We've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow, Vargas said. We'll be announcing additional murder charges against your parents. Are you prepared for the media attention? I've been prepared my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it. That evening, I visited Eleanor's grave for the first time in years. The headstone was simple. Eleanor Matthews' beloved sister, 1941-1998. I'd brought roses from Grandma's garden, the first blooms of spring. I'm sorry it took so long, I told the stone, but Grandma never forgot. She never stopped fighting for you, and now everyone will know the truth. Morrison waited respectfully by the car as I knelt in the damp grass. I thought about the video about Charlotte and Walter planning murder with the casualness of choosing paint colors. They'd killed Eleanor for money, then spent 25 years pretending to grieve while spending her fortune. But Grandma Rose had known. She'd gathered evidence, protected proof, waited decades for justice. Even Kyle Palmer, guilt-ridden and frightened, had kept that damning video until the time was right. They'll never hurt anyone again. I promised Eleanor's grave. Life without parole. They'll die in prison knowing everyone knows what they did to you. The next day's press conference sent shockwaves through Seattle society. The security footage of Walter sabotaging Eleanor's brakes played on every news channel. Former friends and associates distanced themselves with public statements of shock and disgust. Walter and Charlotte were charged with first-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. Their existing sentences would be restructured to ensure they never walked free again. Marcus, watching from federal prison, released a statement through his lawyer claiming no knowledge of Eleanor's murder. No one believed him. At the victim impact hearing, I spoke for both Eleanor and Grandma Rose. Eleanor Matthews was murdered for money, I said, looking directly at my parents. She died alone on a highway, betrayed by family she trusted. For 25 years, her killers lived in luxury bought with her blood. But truth has a way of surfacing even after decades. My grandmother made sure of that. You stole Eleanor's life. You stole her future. You stole decades of sisterhood from Grandma Rose, but you couldn't steal justice forever. Eleanor can rest now, knowing her murderers will pay for every day they stole from her. As they led my parents away in shackles, Charlotte finally broke her silence. "How could you?" she screamed at me. "We're your parents." "No," I said quietly. "You're Eleanor's killers. That's all you'll ever be now." The truth about Eleanor's death had finally come to light 25 years too late, but still in time for justice. Somewhere I felt both Eleanor and Grandma Rose finally at peace, their long wait for truth vindicated at last. The King County Courthouse became a circus for what media dubbed the trial of the century in Seattle. 3 separate trials ran concurrently: Walter for murder and fraud, Charlotte for murder and conspiracy, and Marcus for embezzlement and extortion. The prosecutors coordinated their cases like a symphony, each revelation building on the last. I testified in all 3 trials, spending weeks on various witness stands. By now the story was practiced, but never easy. Each telling brought fresh pain, new realizations about the depth of my family's betrayal. Walter's trial began with Prosecutor Chen methodically destroying his image as a successful businessman. Employee after employee testified about suspicious transactions, forged signatures, and intimidation tactics. But the most damaging testimony came from someone unexpected. "State your name for the record," Chen instructed. "Evelyn Harper. I was Eleanor Matthews' best friend." The silver-haired woman in her 80s commanded the courtroom's attention as she revealed a secret kept for 25 years. "Eleanor called me the night before she died," Evelyn testified. "She was terrified. Said she'd discovered Walter had been stealing from Rose for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. She'd found proof in his office when she'd visited for Sunday dinner. What did she plan to do? She had an appointment with her lawyer Monday morning. She was going to expose everything and have Walter removed from any position of financial authority over Rose." Evelyn's voice cracked. She never made it to Monday. Walter's attorney tried to object, calling it hearsay, but the judge allowed it given the circumstances. Evelyn continued, revealing that Eleanor had given her copies of incriminating documents for safekeeping. "I was too afraid to come forward after she died," Evelyn admitted. "Walter had taken over everything so quickly, so efficiently. When the police ruled it an accident, I thought maybe I was wrong, but I kept the documents." She produced a safety deposit box key, and prosecutors presented the evidence bank statements showing Walter's theft-forged signatures on Rose's accounts, even a panicked email from Walter to Charlotte the day Eleanor confronted him. "He knows everything. We need to accelerate the timeline." Charlotte's trial revealed even darker depths. Her former lover, Richard Dalton, testified about pillow talk confessions, including Charlotte laughing about how easy it had been to cry at Eleanor's funeral. She said the hardest part was not spending the money too quickly. They had to wait a respectable period before upgrading their lifestyle. But the prosecution's star witness was Kyle Palmer, the man who'd accidentally recorded my parents planning Eleanor's murder. Now in his 40s, Kyle took the stand with visible reluctance. "I was just a kid trying to learn guitar," he explained. "I'd set up my dad's camcorder in the garage to record myself. When I came back to get it, I heard voices and hid." "What did you hear?" Mr. Winters explaining to his wife how cutting brake lines would look like an accident. Mrs. Winters asking about inheritance money. Kyle's voice shook. "I was terrified. These were powerful people, and my dad worked for the city." "What did you do with the recording?" "I showed my dad. He went pale, told me to never speak of it. Next thing I knew, he had a new car. We moved to a better neighborhood. I realized he'd been paid off." Kyle looked at my parents with disgust. "I kept the original tape hidden. When I heard about the federal investigation, I knew it was time." The prosecution played the garage video again. Even having seen it before, watching my parents plan murder with such casual efficiency chilled the courtroom. Several jurors couldn't hide their revulsion. Marcus's trial was less dramatic but equally damning. His former colleagues testified about his lavish spending, his gambling debts, his increasingly desperate attempts to cover shortfalls. The FBI presented a forensic accounting that tracked every stolen penny, every forged authorization, every client betrayed. The defendant didn't just steal money, Prosecutor Chen argued. He stole retirement savings, college funds, medical expense accounts. He destroyed lives to feed his addiction. Marcus's attorney tried to paint him as a victim of family pressure, but the strategy backfired when prosecutors played the recording of him threatening me with a gun. His drunken admissions, his offer to frame me for murder, his complete lack of remorse, all captured in digital clarity. Throughout the trials, I watched my family's carefully constructed facades crumble. Walter, who'd terrorized our household with his temper, wept like a child when the garage video played. Charlotte, always perfectly composed, screamed obscenities when her affairs were detailed. Marcus, the golden child, looked diminished and gray as his failures were cataloged. Former friends and associates lined up to testify against them, each revelation adding another nail to their coffins. The country club president discussed their suspicious wealth increase after Eleanor's death. Business partners detailed fraudulent schemes spanning decades. Even their former housekeeper testified about finding bloody clothes in the trash the day after Eleanor died, clothes Charlotte claimed were from gardening accidents. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the psychiatrist who'd evaluated me at Grandma's request, provided crucial testimony about my mental state and Grandma's. Both women were completely competent, she stated firmly. Rose Winters was sharp, strategic, and deeply concerned for Arabella's welfare. She knew her family was dangerous and took precautions. As for Arabella, she showed remarkable resilience despite years of emotional abuse and exploitation. The defense attorneys tried various strategies. Walters claimed diminished capacity due to a personality disorder. Charlotte's argued she was manipulated by her domineering husband. Marcus's went for addiction as a mitigating factor. None of it worked. When it came time for closing arguments, the prosecutors wove together a narrative of 3 decades of greed, murder, and betrayal. They showed how Eleanor's murder funded Walter and Charlotte's rise in society, how they'd systematically plundered Grandma Rose's assets while planning to discard me like garbage. This family built their empire on blood, Prosecutor Chen concluded. They killed for money, stole from the elderly, and tried to destroy anyone who threatened their crimes. Today you have the power to end their reign of terror and deliver justice for Eleanor Matthews, Rose Winters, and Arabella Winters. The juries deliberated for less than a day combined. As each verdict was read guilty on all counts, I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of completion. Watching my parents' faces as they realized they'd spend their remaining years in prison brought no joy. Even Marcus's additional 15 years for the armed threat felt anticlimactic. During victim impact statements, I spoke not of anger but of loss. "You were my parents," I said, looking at Walter and Charlotte. "You were supposed to protect me, guide me, love me. Instead, you murdered my great-aunt, robbed my grandmother, and tried to destroy me. You chose greed over family money, over morality." To Marcus, I continued, turning to my brother. "We could have been allies, friends, siblings who supported each other. But you learned too well from them, valuing success over substance appearance, over authenticity. I'll rebuild with the family you tried to steal from, with the love you tried to destroy, with the truth you tried to bury. Grandma Rose and Eleanor will be remembered for their kindness, their strength, their love. You'll be remembered only as cautionary tales of how greed corrupts everything it touches." As the bailiffs led them away, none of them looked back. The family that had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable, shuffled off in orange jumpsuits and chains. The dynasty built on murder and theft had fallen, brought down by the grandmother they'd underestimated and the daughter they'd dismissed. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of people waited. Some were reporters, but many were former clients of Walter's elderly people Marcus had stolen from friends of Eleanor and Grandma Rose, who'd never known the truth. They applauded as I emerged, not for the spectacle, but for the justice finally served. Morrison stood beside me as I faced the crowd. "Your grandmother would be so proud," he said quietly. "She knew this day would come," I replied. "She planned for it, worked for it, died believing in it. They thought they'd won when she passed, but she was just getting started." The trials were over, the verdicts delivered, the sentences pronounced. Walter would die in prison for Eleanor's murder. Charlotte would follow her society dreams replaced by concrete walls. Marcus would emerge an old man, if at all, his golden future tarnished beyond repair. But I would go on carrying the legacy of two remarkable women who'd loved me enough to fight a decades-long war for justice. The vultures had been caged their feast, interrupted by the patient planning of a grandmother who'd turned their greed against them. Justice so long delayed had finally arrived in full measure. 5 years have passed since the trials that destroyed my family and freed me from their shadow. I stand now in the lobby of the Rose and Eleanor Senior Care Center, watching elderly residents tend the garden that blooms year-round in Seattle's mild climate. The building that once housed Microsoft offices has been transformed into something Grandma Rose would have loved, a place where seniors are treasured, not exploited. Mrs. Morrison, my assistant Jennifer calls still getting used to my married name, the journalism students from UW are here for the interview. I smooth my scrubs, the same purple ones I wore during my first week back in nursing school. Getting my degree at 35 had been challenging, but Grandma's fortune made it possible to focus solely on studies without financial worry. Now I work here 3 days a week, not because I need to, but because I want to. The students file in eager and nervous here to document what they call the Winters case for a true crime podcast. I've given dozens of interviews over the years, turning what could have been salacious gossip into teachable moments about elder abuse, family fraud, and the importance of estate planning. Let's talk in the Eleanor Matthews Memorial Library. I suggest leading them to the wing named for my great-aunt. As we settle into comfortable chairs, I see them notice my wedding ring. The question always comes, and today is no different. Is it true you married the lawyer who helped expose your family? I smile thinking of James Morrison, who became so much more than my attorney. We fell in love during the aftermath. He saw me at my worst and stayed. We married 3 years ago in this very building with the residents as our guests. And your brother? Another student asks hesitantly. The reports say you visit him. This is harder to discuss. Marcus is serving his sentence at Monroe Correctional Facility. I visit monthly. Prison has changed him, or maybe revealed who he always was beneath the golden boy facade. We're building something new, not the relationship we had, but something honest. I don't mention how he sobbed during our first visit, apologizing for the gun, for the threats, for choosing greed over family, or how he's teaching literacy to other inmates, finding purpose in service for the first time in his life. His release is still 8 years away, but I'll be there when he walks out. What about your parents? Walter died in prison 3 years ago. Heart attack. Charlotte is in failing health at the women's facility in Purdy. I've seen her twice. The first time she spat at me. The second she asked about the roses in Grandma's garden. I told her they still bloom every spring. What I don't say is how small she looked in prison gray, how her perfect manicure has been replaced by bitten nails, how she cried when I told her Marcus was teaching others to read. Some transformations come too late to matter, but they come nonetheless. The inheritance, one student ventures, $50 million is life-changing money. It's responsibility-changing money. I correct. The Rose and Eleanor Foundation has distributed $30 million to elder care facilities, abuse prevention programs, and legal aid for seniors. This building operates as a nonprofit. We charge based on ability to pay, and no one is ever turned away. Through the library windows, I spot my husband walking with a familiar figure. Aunt Catherine, now 82, lives here by choice. She could afford anywhere but chooses to stay where she can volunteer with activities, sharing her stories with residents who've become family. Your grandmother's evidence collection was remarkable, another student observes. 20 years of planning. She was patient and thorough, but more than that, she understood that justice isn't about revenge. It's about truth. She could have destroyed them any time after Eleanor's death, but she waited until I was old enough, strong enough to survive the aftermath. Do you forgive them? The question comes from a young woman in the back, her voice barely above a whisper. I consider this carefully. It's asked in every interview, and my answer has evolved over time. Forgiveness isn't absolution. I forgive them in the sense that I don't carry hatred. It would poison me, and Grandma didn't save me, so I could waste my life on bitterness, but forgetting never. Their crimes had consequences that rippled through generations. Eleanor never had children. Grandma spent her final decades gathering evidence instead of enjoying peace. I spent my 20s as an unpaid caregiver instead of building a career. But you rebuilt, someone points out. With help. I smile, thinking of all my unexpected allies. Janet Sullivan is our foundation's director. Sarah Chen from the credit union serves on our board. Even Patricia Whitman retired from the FBI volunteers here, teaching self-defense to seniors. The network Grandma built to expose crimes has become a network for healing. Any regrets? The lead student asks. Only one. I wish Eleanor could see what her sacrifice ultimately built. This center serves 300 seniors. We've helped dozens of families recognize and escape financial abuse. Her death was a tragedy, but her legacy is triumphant. As the interview concludes and the students pack up their equipment, Jennifer appears with a reminder about the afternoon's dedication ceremony. We're opening a new wing funded by a surprise donation from someone who wished to remain anonymous, but whose lawyer's letterhead I recognized. In the garden, residents and staff gather as I take the podium. My husband stands in the front row, his encouraging smile still making my heart flutter after all these years. Uncle Raymond, now 89, sits in his wheelchair, having moved in last year. He's our unofficial historian, regaling anyone who will listen with stories of Rose and Eleanor's childhood. Today we dedicate the Kyle Palmer Rehabilitation Wing, I announce. Mr. Palmer's generous donation will help seniors recovering from illness or injury regain their independence. I don't mention that Kyle, tormented by guilt over his father's role in hiding evidence, has spent 20 years building a successful tech company, or that this donation is his way of making amends for his family's part in concealing Eleanor's murder. Some redemptions are private affairs. As I cut the ribbon, memories flood back. Grandma rose in her bed, gripping my hand, whispering that love was the only wealth that mattered. Eleanor's photograph on Grandma's dresser, forever young, forever missed. My parents in their courtroom seats, realizing their empire of greed was crumbling. Marcus behind glass learning who he might have been without their influence. But stronger than memory is the present moment. Seniors applauding staff members, smiling my husband's hand, finding mine. This is what Grandma's patient planning built, not just justice for crimes, but a future where vulnerability doesn't invite exploitation, where age brings respect, not targeting. That evening, I stand in Grandma's rose garden behind the center. We transplanted every bush from the old house before it was sold, saving her legacy in living color. The roses bloom magnificently tended by residents who share their own gardening wisdom. You did it, Grandma, I whisper to the sunset. You saved me. You got justice for Eleanor. You built something beautiful from something terrible. A hand touches my shoulder. James stands beside me, solid and warm and real. The residents are asking if you'll read tonight. They love your voice. It's become a tradition. 3 nights a week I read in the common room. Sometimes it's mysteries, sometimes romances, sometimes just the newspaper. But always with the same patience and love I once showed reading to Grandma during her final months. What should I read tonight? Mrs. Chen requested poetry, something about spring and new beginnings. I laugh thinking of Sarah Chen, who moved in last year and immediately organized a financial literacy program for residents. Poetry it is. As we walk back inside, I pass the memorial wall where photographs of departed residents remind us why this work matters. Eleanor's picture hangs there, finally honored as she deserved. Beside her, Grandma Rose smiles from a photo taken in her garden, surrounded by the roses that now bloom for everyone. Walter and Charlotte thought they'd won when they declared I didn't deserve a dime. They couldn't have been more wrong. I deserved everything: the truth, the justice, the chance to transform blood money into something healing. Most of all, I deserved the love they never understood, the love that motivated Grandma's 20-year campaign for justice. The vultures circled just as Grandma predicted, But patient love and careful planning turned predators into prey, victims into victors, and a legacy of greed into one of grace. This is our triumph, not in the money or the verdicts, but in the lives touched. The seniors protected the garden that blooms eternal. As I open the book of poetry to read to gathered residents, I think of everyone who made this possible. Grandma Rose, the strategist, Eleanor, the catalyst, Janet, the documenter, Sarah, the guardian, Morrison, the defender, even Kyle Palmer, finding redemption in generosity. This poem is called After Winter Spring. I begin my voice carrying through the common room. It reminds us that no darkness lasts forever, and patient seeds bloom in their season. The residents listen with the same attention Grandma once gave my words. In their faces, I see her legacy multiplied, protected, respected, cherished. The family that tried to destroy me is gone, but the family I've built fills every chair, tends every garden bed, shares every meal in this place of healing. This is what winning looks like. Not in courtroom victories or financial settlements, but in the daily choice to transform pain into purpose, betrayal into blessing, and patient planning into perpetual care. My story began with betrayal in my father's study. It ends with belonging in Grandma's garden, surrounded by roses and residents' love and laughter, the family we choose, and the future we build from the ashes of what others tried to burn. Grandma Rose was right. I didn't deserve a dime. I deserved so much more. And thanks to her patient love and careful planning, I received it all. To everyone listening to this story, I hope it reminds you that justice may be delayed, but not denied, that patient love conquers immediate greed, and that the family we build through kindness matters more than the family we're born into. If you've experienced family betrayal or elder abuse, know that you're not alone and help is available. Please like and subscribe if this story touched your heart. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below about the family, whether born or chosen, who've shown you what love really means. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you always remember that true wealth lies not in what we take, but in what we give. Until next time, tend your own gardens with patience and love.